Okay. Um, and then Nancy, how would you like to handle questions? Would you like me to monitor the questions box and let you
Yeah.
know when they're coming in? Do you want to take them as you go, or do you want to hold questions until before break and then have a questions um, time set aside?
So how I like to do it, Sheila, is if it's something about, so if they have a question about what's on the screen, like they don't understand it, or they can't see something, or or they're really, really lost. I don't want to lose them. I don't think I'll lose them in 5 elements, but then we'll take the question. But what I've been doing is kind of going through a concept and then saying, does anyone have any questions about that? Type it in the chat. And then, we kind of field it and then we move on to the next piece. So with the formulas, it was easy because it was at the end of each formula and then would have a little, does everyone understand it? We're moving forward from here. So what I'll do with this is, we have like the opening concept of 5 elements, of just how 5 elements came to be. And then I'll stop and ask for any questions about that and then move on to the next piece, which is the, descending of all those, like the, oh, excuse me, the Shen, the Shen, the Po, the Hun, the Po, the Yi, all, sort of the descension of that. And then, does anyone have any questions about that? So I'll just kind of move it along like that.
Great.
I think if we wait to the very, very end for questions, we'll lose people. So my feeling when I do these webinars, unless I'm incredibly pressed for time, I do try and like do a little teaching piece, then open it for questions. Do a little teaching piece, and then open for questions. So
Okay, that's great.
Pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty easy. The PowerPoint kind of leads you. So you look beautiful.
Thank you. So do you.
I'm a little bit of a my bathrooms are I had to redo the paint on the ceiling because it was peeling off. But so I haven't. That's why my hair is like icky and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, let me
All
see.
right.
Is that showing the screen? I'm trying to get the screen to come on.
Let's see.
Is that showing the screen? No. Okay. Hold on a second. I had this same little problem.
There it is. I see it.
Okay. So, do you see that?
Yeah, I see your screen. Foundations track, 5 elements in application and clinical practice.
I don't want the subtitles. Okay, but I can't see anybody else, so.
And I don't think you will today, because our foundation group is about 60 people. So they're not going to be on webcam.
Okay. So, but you can see me and you can see the PowerPoint, correct?
Yep.
Okay. But I can't see you. And I can't see the chat right now for some reason.
Yeah, let's see.
Let me just stop this for a second.
I'm
gonna end this. I'm gonna end this for a second and then see why it is that I cannot see. Why can't I see you? Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Not seeing why. Yeah, I guess what will have to happen this time, I mean, last time what I had Pam kind of run the PowerPoint and then I did the teaching. I can run the PowerPoint with this, but I can't see the chat. I can't see the questions.
okay.
So that's.
I can monitor that for you if that helps.
Yeah,
that's what I did with Leslie.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to do that because cannot, I literally can't see. I can't see any of it. I don't know where it's really interesting because lately I've been using Zoom
Hi.
instead of GoToWebinar.
Hi, is that Leslie?
So yeah, that's Leslie. That's her voice.
Hey, Leslie, this is Sheila, and I actually have a student question in the question box that I think you are the right person to answer. Oh, but now I don't hear her anymore.
What do you see there?
Hi. Can you
Hi, Leslie.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is Sheila.
Sheila, do you just see one slide or do you see the whole presenter view with this view?
I see the whole presenter view. I see your sidebar that shows the next 2, 3, 4 slides also,
Okay.
as well as your toolbar on the top.
Yeah. Bummer.
Hi.
Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hello.
And you can start the recording, right? Because I don't have a panel right now. For
Oh, I
some
think you
reason,
started it.
did
We are
I?
recording. Yeah. It
Oh,
might have
okay.
just started automatically. We are recording.
Oh,
I think
okay.
everyone can hear us.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see.
And I can't really see if if the video cam of me is right. So I have no idea if it's cutting me off at the neck or the top of the head or.
I've got a good 3/4 view.
Okay,
We're
great.
seeing from like your collarbone up to your head.
Good.
I do too. Can you both hear me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yeah. Oh, I just
Oh, good.
figured it out. My volume was turned off.
Oh.
You look good, Nancy. You're looking up.
Oh,
That's
yeah, I
good.
know.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you
Leslie, I
both
have
doing?
good. I have a question for you, Leslie.
Yeah.
One of our students this morning, Darcia, is asking, is it better to send individual tests or all the tests in a PDF document?
Probably individual.
All right, I will
Yeah.
type that
That
in.
will be easier to handle. I don't know. Whatever works better for her, I guess. Yep. Yeah, people are taking their tests, sending them in.
That's great.
I know.
Really great.
I don't know if you got my email about the COVID discussion last night, but it was kind of late. So
Yeah, I actually I had 2 clients that I was doing was doing telemedicine with. So it didn't the second person I saw was a new intake, so it took longer than my normal follow-up. So yeah.
yeah, I can understand that. And it's late. It was late. We have it recorded, so if you want it, just let Jill know or me know, and we'll get it.
Yeah, I would definitely love to.
It's about an
Susan
hour
said,
and a half.
yeah, Susan said she said it was excellent. I talked to her this morning and yeah.
Oh, you two. You just get you 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 two and Pamela, the 3 of you. It's so nice. You have quite a triangle going on out there together.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're all in the same time zone, and so
Yeah, that
you know,
helps a lot.
and we support each other and help each other. We definitely talk a lot about our cases, but we talk about everything. It's
Yeah.
nice to have, you know, sisters, herbal sisters.
Yes,
Mhm.
and it's really great to have somebody to share cases with for sure. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Sheila, I didn't see your name on either, but I didn't expect to.
I was in for just a few minutes.
If you want it sent to you, it may already have been. I don't actually think it's been sent out yet.
Okay.
I did ask Jill to send it out to everybody, including the teachers. So now
Oh,
that I'm
good.
remembering, you should all get it. So I'm going to shut up while you two do what you need to do. I just wanted to say hi, good morning.
Hi,
You
good
both
morning.
look so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
You're lucky, Nancy, because, oh, not this morning though. You won't get to see anybody's webcams. And it's different than intermediate because there's 75 people.
That's tremendous. I'm very
Exactly.
happy
So
for you. Yeah.
at some point, Sheila might unmute everybody, but even then, we have to individually unmute whoever wants to talk.
Yeah.
And then they have to unmute themselves. There's quite a protection level going on, which is great.
It's good. It gets a little noisy if you don't have that. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and even yesterday I saw some of the intermediates at the beginning, and somebody had their cat walking across the screen, which I love, but still, it could be distracting to the teacher. Okay, now I'm really going to shut up.
Well, we have a couple of minutes, and it's all good.
Yeah, 5 elements. I'm curious to see what you're going to do since you can't be up there acting it out or having everybody divide up and act it out.
That's the piece that's really missing for me. You know, it's last year when I taught this in person, you know, we all got in a big circle, and then what we did is in twos, we had each other do you know, 5-element analysis, and we and we just kept going, like, and do it as fast as you can, and we just kind of had a train, and they just kept moving to the next person, the next person, next person, and then they had, you know, they had a stack of all these 5-element, you know, assessments, and then we just talked about them, and it was like a blast. It was so great. It was so juicy. But yeah, next year we'll do it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. In person is really different. I have people act out the fundamental properties too.
Right. It's fun.
It makes a difference, you know, rather than just
Yeah.
sitting, having that interaction.
You know, there's the learning through the mind, and then there's the learning through, you know, that kinesthetic. And
Oh, you don't have to tell me. I know.
Yes, you know very well. You have some tips about that on webinars.
Okay, I had paused our recording and we are at 9:30, so I'm going to start that button again.
Okay, have a great session, you two.
All right.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Leslie, before you go,
Yeah.
anything administrative wise or notes that that we need to communicate to our foundation group?
Not at this point, no.
Okay.
I'm still hoping that we're going to be able to show fantastic fungi, but I haven't heard back. So,
Okay.
so let's not say anything. And yeah, no,
Okay.
nothing new. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. All right. Nancy, we are recording.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at East West School of Planetary Herbology in the ethers versus in person. This is a foundations track. All of you are obviously in the first level of your you know, of your learning. And this class is going to be focused on 5 elements, and then how to apply that in clinical practice. And I know some of you in foundation are not quite seeing people yet. or you're thinking about seeing people, or you might just be seeing family and friends, which, by the way, is wonderful because it really helps you exercise everything that you're learning. But sometimes this course or this class of 5 elements is taught very philosophically. But what I like to do, and it's just sort of how I like to approach my learning, is how do I take this information and apply? So that's what we're going to try and do today. It's a little bit different because we're not in each other's presence, and we can't do that exercise where we can kind of practice on each other. But I'm going to do my best with that. I have a little exercise at the end that we can do, which will be fun, and I'll talk about that at the break. So the books that are really correlated with this class would, of course, be in your OB1, which, of course, we call OB1. Wait a second, I have it right here. But yes, I'm right next to my library, right? And mine's a mess, so I apologize for that. It's my years of learning. So Chinese Traditional Herbal Medicine, Volume 1, that's that one. And then, of course, Between Heaven and Earth, which is, those 2 books alone can give you enough to really use this clinically. Part of what you're going to learn today is, of course, constitutional type and TCM to some degree. There'll be more on that. Leslie teaches more on that, and she does an incredible job with that. But this will, with constitutional type, we're more than one type. So you really have to practice it a lot to kind of get the gestalt of it and be able to kind of see the types just from how the person is walking in and how they're presenting, how they're speaking, the way that they speak, etc. The more practice with that, the better. So 5 elements really starts that process. And, this can be correlated to the humors in Greek herbalism, and of course the 3 elements in Ayurvedic, which is Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So a lot of traditional herbal healing medical models have this connection to the elements, to something outside of just the human body, versus, of course, allopathic medicine, which is kind of more reductive. It reduces things down and separates things out, whereas a lot of herbal traditions go the other way. They try and see how we fit into the bigger picture and how we're connected to nature and connected to the universe and how all of that works. So that's what we're going to really do today. It's really fun. It can give you enormous insight. So sometimes if I get lost in a case, if I think to myself, gosh, I cannot see the patterns here, I'll back up and I'll say, well, Nancy, if you can't see the patterns, what are the elements, right? And I actually do talk to myself this way. Nancy, if you're not seeing the patterns clearly, if you're not really like, oh, I see that pattern, right? Liver qi stagnation or whatever it is, right? Then I'll say, well, what are the elements? And going back to that is brilliant because then it will lead you into the patterns. So again, having that place to move backwards instead of it just being so reductive, it just always step back, see the big picture. And this is the big picture. So we'll review the theory of 5 elements, and then we'll have some exercises, and we'll just go through all of that. So let's start. Okay, let's begin. And I'm just going to, of course, move the thing. So we're going to start at the beginning, which is really cool. So this is just one drawing. There are so many different drawings about this it's called the cosmology. So in the beginning, it's right in the beginning, there was only darkness and then sound, right? There was chaos in the beginning. And then the Tao, which was one thing. It was just one unknowable wholeness, right? Beyond space and time, right? This big thing. And then something happens. There's an energy, right? And this being and non-being form starts to polarize. And then it becomes the yin and the yang, right? And that polarization, from the one comes the two, right? And then the heaven and earth separate. right? And then all of this comes down and descends, right? And becomes the earth. And then we're going to talk about the 5 elements. But basically, it's that tension between the positive and the negative poles. This is electromagnetic. This is not moral. So try to think about it from a like electricity kind of thing. You have a positive pole and a negative pole. And it's like once in the beginning, it's this one thing, and then it just kind of, electromagnetically kind of separates and becomes these two things, but they're still joined, but they're still two things, right? I know, kind of wow, right? And then so as it moves, right, it keeps moving from formless to form, it becomes chi. And it's that field of chi that's compressed and expands and compresses and expands. And that happens in the universe. Astronomers often talk about how gases like compress and then expand, right? You can have this like really interesting experience of a universal energy of things kind of really, really expanding and then also getting really, really, really dense. Like black holes are incredibly dense, right? And then you have star matter and all of that makes a sun, and that's this gas that's expanding and shooting off its energy. So all of that is part of chi. And then the chi descends, right? And becomes the 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. And so I have to say this because, when we're all together and at the end of it, we kind of make, Leslie has this beautiful ceremony where we, get in the circle of life and we have the 4 directions. That's what this is reminding us of, is the very beginning where all of this starts. That's the big, big picture, right? It's like this huge thing of the oneness splitting in 2, and then chi forming from this electromagnetic experience, and then it descending, and then creating the 4 directions, and then from the 4 directions, right, become this centrifugal spinning. This is spinning starts to happen because of this energy, right? And then we get the 5 elements. So it's beautiful. It's all this one thing. And we, that's the descending into this, from the formless into the form. Okay. So let's do the 5 spirits or the 5 elements, and then I'll stop and take questions. Okay, so.
Hey, Nancy, I'm going to pause you real quickly there. It looks like some folks wanted to see your next couple slides. Are those illustrative of what you were just speaking about?
Oh, go backwards?
We're still seeing your title slide.
Why? Yeah. I'm moving the thing along and you're not seeing it move?
No, we're not.
Okay,
We're still
hold on.
seeing the title slide. Okay.
Something's wrong then. Hang
All right.
on a second.
Okay, so now, now we're seeing 5 spirits and 5 elements.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to do it this way. Okay.
All right,
I'm
and
so sorry you weren't seeing that. So let me just move it like this. Okay,
right,
does everyone see that?
I'm seeing Taoist cosmology.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have, are you able to put it into full screen mode or
When I
just
did
text?
that, you lost it. So let me try it again because
Okay.
it wasn't full screen mode, but I don't know what happened. See if this works. Does that work? You seeing that? You seeing that?
I see Taoist cosmology.
Yeah, it's not working because okay, do you see 5 spirits now?
Still
Yeah,
Taoist cosmology.
Yeah, I don't, you know what it is? It's because this is the one problem with GoToWebinar is that if I don't set up the meeting, then there's this weird disconnect with the PowerPoint and moving the PowerPoint. Can you see it now? Can you see 5 spirits and elements right now?
5 spirits and 5 elements, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to do it in this setup. Not my favorite, but it's not allowing me to, for some reason when I go into slideshow, it's not showing the advancement of the slides. So
Okay.
I apologize. I'm sure the problem is I don't have a control panel anymore. It disappeared. Yeah. I mean, I could leave the meeting and come back and see if we can fix it. Do you want me to do that?
Nancy, are you using PowerPoint?
Yes.
Then just go up to the slideshow
I already
and
did that. I already did
choose
that.
start from the first, and then you can manually hit the down button and go a slide at a time by yourself.
Yeah, I've been doing that, but it's not advancing. Is it advancing now?
No.
No.
No. Huh.
Yeah, I did that, Leslie, and there's been a problem.
Sorry to hear that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you all figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, let's not log out. I think, this will still work.
Okay. Okay. So I'm so sorry, everyone. Can everyone see 5 spirits and 5 elements? Can you tell me if they're seeing that slide now?
Hey, folks, give me some type in yes or no. Do you see 5 spirits, 5 elements?
Yes, I see it. You
Yes,
Okay.
yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
All
I
right.
came in a little bit late, so you can't advance beyond that slide.
No, I can do it but only in this view. It's not a great view.
That's okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
I get back into my flow here. Oh, technology. Okay. So the wheel is called the wuzhing. This is the wheel of life, right? So this is the wheel of the 4 directions and the 5 elements. And so these are just names, okay? But basically they're names for these concepts, and these concepts turn into us and how we're connected with the energies that are bigger and more mysterious to us, right? So there's the vertical part of the wuzhing, right? So the heaven, the spirit, the yang into yin, the that which was not matter, right? And it turns into matter through this this wuzhing, the wheel. Okay, so the horizontal part of the wheel is, of course, north, south, east, west, and it's also wood. It's water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, right? And it's going to go like that. And we really get into that part, but I do want to explain this. This is primordial. So when we talk about primordial elements, we're talking like about the shen, the hun, the yi, the po, and the zhe. And so these are the primordial elements that will turn into the 5 elements that will turn into the zangfu, right? The organs, the paired organs. So, and that's again, that's like when I'm in my clinic, I can't figure out the patterns, I back up into the 5 spirits and the 5 elements like this, because that giving me that bigger picture makes me see better, right? I instead of getting like this mouse vision, I get big eagle vision using the 5 spirits and the 5 elements. So the 5 spirits, the shen, the hun, the yi, the po, and the zhe. And you can spend your life studying them, the 5 spirits. They're unbelievable. They're poetic. They're philosophical. They're spiritual, right? And I'm not going to get into them that deeply. We had a teacher, you probably know Miles, but Miles used to get so deep into them, and it was like poetry. It was amazing and beautiful. But my task is to take this and help you figure out how to use this clinically. So you kind of have to get a sense of it. So, we call the Shen the spirit, and that's what it is. It's the spirit of the heart, right? But the Shen here is heaven, right? That's what it is. It's basically that which is above heaven. So in the center of the wuzhing, or the wheel of life, it's empty, right? It's like it swirls around and it's empty. There's emptiness. And then, right, that vortex, right, appears. And that's where it's the lightest. It's the most ephemeral yang qi. It's like, you know, like this, like incredibly incredible lightness of being, right? That's the center is that, and it gets much more dense on the outside. So these 5 spirits will make up the 5 elements. And the 5 elements become available to us in matter and in form, in dense form, right? So these very ephemeral 5 spirits become deeper into matter as they become the 5 elements, and those 5 elements become part of us. And so that's the dissension of all of this, this incredible concept, if you will, of how our bodies, our health, our well-being is connected to this, you know, this huge, huge, huge piece of our universe, and the yin and the yang, and then you know, that which is unspeakable, right? That bigger piece. So, and you can call it whatever you want, right? Okay. So the Wujing, the wheel of life, the 5 elements develop all of this developed from the ancient cultures in the East, somewhere around 300 BCE, but it could be way older than that. It's just, that's all we know. You know, and 5 element theory spins out of this play. And it is a very, very important role in the healing symptoms and healing. And it's very much rooted in our school. You know, we're Zong Fu, you know, we believe in the paired organs and the health of those organs and understanding those patterns, and then applying our herbs and our formulas to uplift and help those elements and the organs related to those elements find balance, right? So that's a big piece, and it doesn't mean that we don't, you know, pay attention to 4 levels and 6 stages. Not that's a part of it, but we really, this whole Zong Fu piece comes from this. So if you can kind of grok this, you really start to understand, you know, the whole conversation around the liver and the gallbladder and the heart and the small intestine and the large intestine and the lungs and those pieces of the elements of our healing model. When a physical pattern is not responding to, you know, to the Zong Fu application of healing, or 4 levels, or 6 stages, then there is an emotional or psychosomatic or spiritual piece. So that's where we, you know, in this model, we believe that you cannot separate any of this, any of the healing, the illness, the imbalances that occur as a human being. You cannot separate it from this higher piece, the Wujing, right? That there's something going on in these 5 spirits, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit more. But and the 5 spirits that are predecessors to the 5 elements. So we'll go into this much more deeply. So the 5 phases. So each of the 5 phases or 5 elements corresponds to a natural element. So there's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And each of those phases contains ideas that correspond to natural elements and then correspond to the balancing act that our body goes through, our organs and our tissues and our fluids. All of that has a relationship to this, right? So that's, we call those correspondences, and we're gonna work with those, right? And this is like, it's sometimes our Western mind, and I have one of those, right? I love science, I love research, you know, my father was a scientist, you know, I grew up in that milieu. You know, and sometimes we can explain it with science, and sometimes we can make a correlation to Western medicine, sometimes we can't. But there is a resonance. If you were to get really still and understand that universally there's this very recognizable, intuitive, somatic experience with 5 elements and how it relates to our health and well-being. That's when you really start to embody this. And that's when your clinical application of this becomes really refined, if you will. So there's a Chinese character for 5 elements or phases, and it means crossroads. And you can, I mean, in a sense, that makes sense, right? It's like, here's the crossroad between fire and earth, the crossroad between earth and metal. And that this is moving. This is not a still. This is a dynamic, constantly moving piece, right? And these are also archetypes, right? So it's a dynamic physiological thing, it's a dynamic elemental thing, it's a dynamic natural piece. So like in nature, when you look in nature, it's a dynamic that we see you know, in so many different aspects to life, right? It's part of the web that's woven for us. And we also have archetypes or constitutional types, or, you know, types that are really, you know, more, that have a predominance of one or more of these others. So, okay, so the let's move on to this. So the Sheng cycles, and I do want to go back to a little bit more on that, but I'll weave it in here. So we have the Sheng cycles. The Sheng cycle is this dynamic cycle, right, between fire, earth, metal, water, and wood, right? So fire creates the earth, right? Joy, right? Joy is fire. You know, joy is impassion, right? It's our passion, right? So when you're really happy in something and your heart's happy, you know, it shines out of your face and people feel you, right? I love to teach. I love to share, not to teach. I love to share knowledge that I think is precious and valuable, and it feeds my heart, and my heart's happy. And so that engenders health in my digestion, which is very true for me, right? So it also allows me to be sympathetic. When my heart is happy, I can be sympathetic to others, right? So that's the Sheng cycle. It's fire, happiness in the heart creates a healthy earth, right? It creates sympathy and understanding, not just sympathy like, oh, poor, but understanding, right? When your heart's happy and you're centered in your heart and you have this good fire element, you understand, you have this understanding, right? And so that's earth, right? And then the earth creates metal, right? By when you understand, you also have this sympathy that also is, they also say, when you have a heart that's open, your heart can break. And when your heart breaks, you can cry for the world. And that's not like a selfish kind of like grief. It's kind of like an understanding of our human situation, that is as beautiful as everything is here on earth, right? There's tragedy and sorrow, and we're going through it now. There's loss, right? And that there's a part of our heart, because our heart is open and our heart is healthy, and we can understand and have sympathy, we can cry for the world. And when we cry for others in the world, you know, sometimes that can turn into, right, just tears, right? Just tears when it's healthy. And if it's not healthy, it can turn to fear, right? Grief can turn to fear, or grief can turn to, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose again, or the recognition of, wow, life can be painful and I don't want to cry this much. So what else can I do? Well, it can also create anger. So this is also like, this is a part of the cycle of, you know, loss, the cycle of loss, right? But anger, when we release anger and we don't suppress anger, our hearts can move again, and then we have joy again. So it's this real, you know, repetitive cycle. It's ongoing, it's repetition, it's gestation, birth, transformation, death. It's the life cycle of everything. On the left side, right, you have the yang or the lifting. And on the right side, you have the yin. It's called entropy. So this is energy, right? And then this is entropy, right? Something is falling, something is dying or withering, entropy, or you have something that's growing and gestational, right? So, and that's just how this all goes. This is the wheel of life, the Sheng cycle. Does anyone have any questions about that? I'm going to stop right here for a second because I am going to back up a little bit just to talk about each element again. But I want to make sure we're all following and we kind of get it and you know where I'm going. Everyone all right?
Hey, Nancy, I just unmuted myself here. Let's see. Taffy says, confirming the Shen cycle is the same as the wheel of elements on the previous slide, and will they correspond with the north, south, east, west cardinal points?
Yes, yes, yeah. So this slide, right, where you have this spinning, right, that centrifugal, say that 10 times fast. I can't even say it once.
Centrifugal.
Centrifugal. Untie my tongue, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. That's it right there. And
Right.
that corresponds with that.
And Jenna says, could you actually go over the yin yang in the cycle again?
Okay, so the yin and the yang. Okay, sure. So we start at the beginning. And we'll talk more about yin and yang in the material world. So we have that which is above, and we have that which is below in the material world. So the yin and the yang here that I'm talking about is even more ephemeral than the yin and the yang in our bodies. And we'll talk about the yin and the yang in our bodies, heat, and Leslie does too. And, when we talk about that piece of how does it manifest in our bodies and how does that look and feel and smell, and we're going to get to that in what I call material form. But from this perspective, from just the beginning of the class, the yin and the yang here is the separation of these two energy, right? We have one energy and now we have two. One's light, one's moist and dense and hard, and one's light and ephemeral and warm. And then from that formlessness to form, right, comes chi, right? So, but this is like a way above. This is not like manifest here in our body. So we're going to get into the yin and the yang as a correlation of the 5 elements here in just a minute. But did that help you? This is more esoteric and ephemeral than the yin and the yang that's descended into our bodies.
Right. This is sort of the background philosophy.
Right. The cosmology, way out in the universe kind of thing. Yeah.
All right.
Did that help clear that up a little bit more?
We've got a couple other questions. Ria asks if these relate to specific organ systems, and I said yes, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Karen asks, what is the first element in the cycle, wood or fire? And I said we generally start with wood because it relates to the spring season, but some schools place an emphasis on different organs or different phases.
We're kind of a liver wood school, or that's my understanding, but
right, we were talking about Free Amazing Wanderer the other day. Yeah.
Because it's dynamic and it's always moving. It's kind of like, that story, the chicken and the egg.
Right.
Which was first, chicken or the egg? The more that I read about 5 elements, and especially when I'm preparing for this class, I'm always reading more. I certainly don't feel like I know enough, but I continue to read and use it clinically. It's kind of not like what's first. It's like they're present and moving and they're dynamic all at the same time. And what's first is what's the unknown, right? This is what's first, the Tao. That's what's first. And then there's the separation of the Tao to Qi. And then from Qi come the 5 spirits, and then from the 5 spirits and the primordial motion of dynamism, right? Things are in motion, right? Spin out the 5 elements, and then from those 5 elements, they descend even further. So I know we all, especially if you have a very metal mind, right? If you have a metal mind, you want to know, okay, which one's first, which one's second, blah, 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 blah. And it's not really like that, although in some ways it is. And when you start to get into the clinical application of it, and you have a constitutional type, you have a very fire constitutional type, you have to think of things like, okay, if they're fire constitutional, means their fire is out of balance. So what's on the yin side and what's on the yang side, what's feeding, and we'll go through that in a second. We're almost there. You're like right there.
All right. Karen says, yeah, the serpent eating its tail, spiral of life.
Right on.
Pradnya has a couple of questions. I'll read them both together. They're related. Does wood correspond to air and metal to ether in Ayurveda? That's one. And her second question is, do these elements correspond to certain personality?
So let me answer the second part of that question. Yes, there's a personality that we're going to get into that. And I love that you're like right there, which is perfect. But I always experience with this class, because it always makes sense, right? It's almost as if we could self-teach ourselves this, because there's some kind of reckoning with it, right? We understand it already because we are it, right? We're living it all the time. So it's like what's next, and the way that you're thinking is perfect. Now, Sheila, can you go back to the first question about wood and fire becoming?
Does wood correspond to air and metal to ether in Ayurveda?
Okay, I'm trying to remember this. Do you remember this, Sheila? Because I did have this memorized at one point.
Right. And
so,
I think
Vata is
not exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
Not exactly. You have to understand the 5 element system, and the element system is universal. It's one of the reasons why I called what we're doing planetary herbology, because there's an element system in Greeks. They picked it up as 4, and originally the 5 were actually 4 with the earth in the center, and it worked its way into the outside. And the Ayurvedic 5 elements is a little bit different, but it embodies the same thing. Basically, there's nothing real about 5 elements in any of these systems. Basically, it's just an overlay of how to understand, how to gather some information out of the universe. And it's and basically it's just a model like that. Some people use astrology, and I don't use astrology for fortune telling, but astrology, like Culpeper uses it, explains how the universe works a little bit. And so the 5 elements demonstrates is just an overlay of being able to pull out certain information about the natural world. And so each culture shapes it according to their own predilection. In other words, and so the Indian culture has a lot more to do with yogic and spiritual ideas, and the Chinese are more agricultural, and the Greeks picked it up from across and brought it over through Tibet and so forth. The American Indians have the 4 directions. Basically, that's like a 5 element system. And I'm going to shut up now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Hopefully that answered your question. So we're right in that spot where we're talking about something that's a little bit ethereal and esoteric, and we haven't quite gotten to the place where we're really completely descended into the body yet. So does that make sense? So take a deep breath. I'm going to just share a little bit more about.
Pradna says thank you. So yes, I think that's helping. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So water, the water element, right? Pours from the sky as rain. You boil it in a pot, right? The essence in nature, rivers, oceans, lakes, it's flowing, it undulates. Sometimes it has boundaries, sometimes it's boundless, like the ocean, right? It can roil, it can be deadly, it can be still. It includes ice crystals, dewdrops, steam and vapors, there was this incredible mist on my pond, on the pond that I live on this morning. I was just spellbound. It can be bubbling springs, right? It can be a geyser, like at Yellowstone. And it can be waves, tidal waves. It's the energy of winter, of the seed, depth, darkness, dormancy, storing things. It's also receptive, and it remembers forever. Water remembers forever. And it's relentless power. If you think about the ocean, I read a book called The Wave, and it talked about these rogue waves, and they're just they come out of nowhere, and boom, all life is gone, right? An oil rig just shattered, right? It's nothing, right? It's just unbelievable power. It's also the ability to trust and to wait for the right moment. Yeah. So it also is a drop, and the drop becomes one with the endlessness of all. So that's water, right? That when I think about water just as an element, those are the things I think about. Okay, so that's water. It's called Shui, Shui, Shui. Okay, then wood. Okay, Mu, wood. It shoots upwards. It moves with great determination, like a tree, cutting into the air and standing against that which pulls it down, right? Against gravity. It goes the opposite of gravity. Think about that. Think about how magnificent a tree is, because gravity's pulling this way, and they're going this way. With amazing determination, right? Towards the light, towards the sky, towards heaven, right? It pushes its roots deep into the earth and pushes its trunk and branches to the sky. It takes from the soil and gives to the soil. It's the energy of spring, of new beginnings, of progressive movement, reaching for the future, reaching for heaven. It has the qualities of fiber that give it suppleness and strength. Things that can move with strength, right? Helps in anything to maintain integrity. So think about like when wood is really healthy, there's incredible integrity, right? And it can withstand incredible storm, winds, rain, ice, snow, and it stands in it beautifully, right? And things are transforming around it, and it has this direction towards the heaven. So that's wood. Like when I'm thinking about wood, that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, fire, spark, flame, light, heat, embers, connectivity, right? Summer, blossoms, relationships, right? Creativity, spontaneity, fun, joy, right? Expansion, right? Things that expand, things that are getting bigger, right? That's fire. Fire just can keep going, right? Outreaching, right? Yeah, so that's when I think of fire, that's what I'm thinking of. That's when I'm trying to find those qualities together. Earth, the mountain, right? The meadow, the mud, right? The soil, the clods, right? Mud, dry dust, sand. Late summer, things that have fruited, ripening fruit, that smell of a really ripe piece of fruit, which is like, so yummy, right? You just want to devour it. Very productive, right? Cornucopia, stability, fertility, nurturing. It's about self-sustenance, right? It's about having enough. It's harvest, right? And that's earth, right? It's like a plenty, everything a plenty, things that are just, my cup runneth over, right? That's earth, right? Enough for everyone, right? That incredible satisfaction of, and relaxation of there's plenty, and there's more than plenty, right? And then metal, Jin. So earth is Tu, T-U. Fire is Ho, H-U-O. And metal is Jin, J-I-N, Jin. So metal is crystals, right? Ores, like ores, gold, silver, diamonds, rubies, right? Stones, metals found deep in the earth. The energy of autumn. Autumn's my favorite time of the year. The hardening of seeds, the falling of leaves, the sap going down instead of up, the quality of endurance and mystery, the understanding of death to live again. That's very mysterious, right? Death to live again, right? To die to oneself to live again. That is metal, right? It's just this incredible, it's wizardry, right? It's the ability to crystallize its own and accumulate in quality and accumulate in value from the crystallization of things. The hardening and the safekeeping of that energy of abundance, and that's metal. So those are the qualities, right? The best that I could do with qualities, all right? Okay, and that's the Sheng cycle. Okay, we're going to move into the Ko cycle. The Ko cycle, you will you will visit the Ko cycle over and over and over again, because this is when this I use all the time, every day in practice, because I have to sometimes back up again when I'm working with patterns to say, okay, well, what's going on here? Do I have fire melt? Do I have fire that's melting metal? Do I have metal that's cutting wood? Do I have water that's extinguishing fire? Do I have earth that's absorbing water? Okay, so if you think about it, in the Sheng cycle, you're going around in this, right, it's kind of in a very direct pattern of, well, we're making something and then we're breaking something, and then it dies and then it comes back, right? And it goes around and around like that. But how do you create endurance in that? Because that's kind of a fast cycle, right? It goes pretty quickly. So how you create balance and endurance is through the Ko cycle. And that's kind of like when I'm thinking about it, it's like, well, how do we endure? How do we start to not always be building and breaking and building and breaking and building and breaking? How do we find that place where we're just, where there's homeostasis? And this to me is really kind of the most beautiful picture of homeostasis. So in the Ko cycle, you have control and limitation. So the thing that controls is limiting, but in that limitation, you're getting a little bit more time, basically. You're getting homeostasis. So fire, right, melts metal. So joy melts grief, right? So finding your heart and finding the things that make you happy will help you deal with your grief, right? Metal cuts wood, right? Metal cuts wood. So grief cuts anger. Sometimes people who are just angry all the time, right? That's just their go-to. They're frustrated, they're angry. They're frustrated, they're angry. They're not thinking about it, right, in a healthy way, right? And so when we have like a really incredible understanding of things, we can cut that anger pattern just through our deep sorrow, our connectedness to the broken heart, right? Our connectedness to the immortal spiritual broken heart, the broken heart that's like not a pity party broken heart, the broken heart that is the big broken heart, the grief of knowing that there is loss and there'll always be loss, and having that cuts through that anger, right? Wood breaks up earth, right? So the tree growing through the soil breaks up the soil, right? So anger breaks up sympathy. Sometimes sympathy, when it's sympathy, that's not a healthy sympathy. So there's understanding, right? Real understanding. And then there's just sympathy of like, oh, poor this, oh, poor that, oh, poor this, oh, poor that, right? Oh, poor me, right? So, you know, a healthy wood, right? Wood or healthy, what I call righteous anger, will break up that victimization or oh, poor me, right? So that's really good balance right there. And earth absorbs water, sympathy absorbs fear. So when we understand fear, sometimes is very isolating, right? You're all by yourself and you're frozen in your fear, right? So earth, you know, sympathy, the big one, the sympathy that's more about like, I understand. Understanding breaks up fear, right? Earth absorbs water. And then water extinguishes fire. So for those people, so we can get a little crazy with our joy, right? We become a little manic, right? Like, woo, I gotta have fun all the time, right? And it's taxing, right? So water, right? Just a little bit of like, hey, check it out. If you spend all that energy, right, you're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna get hurt. You might get really sick. You might die. So a little bit of balance here. Water extinguishes fire. So fear extinguishes excessive joy. And that's the co-cycle. And that, but you know, it's not, I mean, it's limiting to some effect, of course, but it's not, it doesn't have to be damaging unless it does get damaging. And the co-cycle, when you see it in your patients or in your clients, when you see that co-cycle emerging and you see it in an unhealthy way, you don't want to remove the co-cycle. What you want to do is try and find the balance in the co-cycle. So what part of the co-cycle that's working that creates homeostasis. So this is the part where we get to live a little longer and have a little bit more, you know, of a homeostatic effect in life. Okay. Alrighty, I want to move on to the correspondences, but does everyone kind of have a sense of these cycles coming? I'm just going to do this since I have it here, starting from, you know, all the way out here, the one.
Hey, Nancy, this is
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Can you just repeat real quickly what you said was the emotional trajectory in the co-cycle, fire to metal, the first one?
Fire to metal. Okay. So fire melts. So fire melts metal. So so joy breaks up, or joy melts sorrow or grief, right? So, but in the imbalanced way, sorrow or grief are those people who just, you know, they're so sad all the time. They're like, it's depression, right? So they're like, you know, everything's a bummer. You know, I'm so sad. They cry a lot, right? But they're not living in their heart. They're just, you know, there's something that they're not listening to the passion in their life. They're not listening to their heart. They're just stuck in this depression, right? They're stuck in the sadness. They're stuck in the grief. And fire, you know, our passion, the thing that sparks us is what melts that grief.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you know, interesting that, so the reason why I have these little gray is because they're going on at the same time. You know, I broke them out, but the Sheng cycle and the Ko cycle are going on at the same time, always, right? You have this going on, and then you have this going on. And you have to kind of figure out where you are in that. And then it's kind of fun to untangle that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, so language is like an amazing thing to me. So I'm trying to choose my words carefully. I think the important thing that I want to say here about this is that This isn't a moral conversation, right? It's not like an ethical or moral conversation, right? You're not a bad person if you're depressed and you're grieving, and you're not. You're just, that's where you are, right? You're not a bad person if you're filled with fear about something, right? You're not bad. This isn't bad. But you can get sick from it, right? You can like physically get sick from these things, right? So how do we help? How do we help ourselves if we're stuck, in one of these pieces? How do we use the other parts of the cycle to help us? So if we're so sympathetic, right, that we can't move in the cycle, right? If we're like, we're in this place over here in Earth and we're stuck here, and then we have a lot of things in Earth that are out of balance. And so what part of our problem is, we're always thinking about other people, we're always thinking about other people, we're always thinking about others, and we're not thinking about, we're not thinking about ourselves at all. We're not taking care of ourselves. That we need a little bit of anger and frustration to move us out of that other people, other people, other people, and not, because the earth is about that, a plenty, right? We're giving and giving and giving and giving, right? So if you have this wood element, that's just like kind of like going, hey, you got to take care of yourself too, or you're gonna get really pissed, right? Because you just like burnt yourself out, right? This helps us, that little bit of like intelligence from the wood element helps us balance that overgiving piece. So it's not, again, it's not a moral issue. It's like, where are they? Are the people who are like stuck in fire, because they're partying all the time, right? And they're on the social media constantly. They have to be connecting and connecting, and they're over connecting, right? They're just absolutely over connecting, and they're burning themselves out, right? And they're not connected to the other parts of what it means to be a human being, so that, you have water that'll help put out that fire a little bit, right? So, and metal, what metal cuts through wood, for those people who are just doing, and they're frustrated and angry, they have anger outbursts, and they're just like completely, I mean, and there are wood types, right? And our culture kind of like supports that wood doing, and not being enough. Metal cuts that, right? Softening the tears of the existential, sorrow of the world, cuts through that overdoing, driving, forcing, pushing, right? It softens it, it cuts it, it stops that overdoing piece. So using this is so beautiful, to help us. Like, we can think about that even when this is so easy to use, right? You don't have to have a diagnosis. You don't have to have a final assessment on anything. You just go to that element and say, what are my herbs that fit into these, that can help balance this and give them some homeostasis here? It's really beautiful. You can do that. You can start that now. You don't have to know a pattern. You don't have to know anything. As a foundational student, you can use this and you can help people. And that's what's so beautiful. So I think I'm going to move on to the correspondences, and then we'll take some more questions. I think this is really good.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, this is, when I was first introduced to this, like I thought it was absolute poetry. It made so much sense to me. I thought, how could I have been going along all this time not knowing this? But it really brings it down into the body. And it makes sense because I love nature, and I spend so much time in nature, watching animals, watching plants, watching, I'm kind of a watcher, watching the pond, watching my dogs, And so it just is incredibly, it makes so much sense. To me, there's just so much logic here. It's more than that. It's like this kinesthetic, it's like, I want to say it's like the kinesthetic, yes, like, oh, finally, right? Every element corresponds to a Zhang Fu, your organ, right? A sound, a climate, a color, parts of the plants that we use that kind of fit in there, our function, the function in the world, function in, any part of some mechanical piece, right? a season, and even the invisible spiritual part of us. These are all the correspondences. So water is the kidney, and the kidney and the bladder. So the paired organs are kidney and bladder together. And the sound is a groan or a moan. And by the way, this happens, so, you know, just as examples. I have, you know, so you might have a client come in and they might sigh, and they might sigh. Some people actually kind of groan a little bit. Their voice sounds like it's groaning, right? It's like, oh, I tried that. I'm trying not to laugh, but I'm thinking of one of my clients who does this. Oh my God, she's such a water type. It's like hysterical. I can't, and I have to like behave myself because when she talks, she sounds like she's groaning, right? It's like, wow. And she's freezing cold, like freezing cold. And sometimes in the winter when she comes in to see me, you know, on follow-ups, you know, I'm just sort of her basic practitioner. Her lips will almost be blue, you know, and of course she's way better now, way better now, but she's very, very cold. So yeah, so these are the correspondences. So kidney, bladder, the sound is groaning, the element is cold, right? The time of year is winter, and it's blue or black. Wood is liver. Liver and gallbladder together. The sound is shouting. And you ever meet those people? and you're like, you know, you don't have to shout. And they'll say to you, I'm shouting? This is my normal inside voice. Right? They're a wood person. The element in nature is wind, and the color is green. Fire is, of course, the heart and the small intestine. And the sound is laughter, right? And it's heat, warmth, and heat, and the color, of course, is red. That makes sense. Earth is the spleen, or you know, the traditional Chinese medicine spleen, not our spleen in Western medicine. So this is actually like spleen pancreas, right? It's kind of like our stomach, and our the spleen is more like our pancreas, like our ability to digest, right? And the sound is singing, and definitely people who are earth types, they have this sing-songy voice. You know, I'm not even sure I can do it, but Pamela Shaw she's very much an earth person, and her voice, if you ever hear her voice, it's sing-songy. She's got so much earth in her. She's that sing-songy voice. Oh, it's so good to see you, and I'm really happy you're here today. I'm trying to do it. I'm not sure that's a really good example, but she does it because that's who she is. She kind of embodies it. So she has that part of it. There's dampness there, right? There's like puddles and moistness, and you know, anything that is you know, of the earth. And the color is yellow. And metal is the lung and large intestine. It's weeping and grief, and it's dryness, right? Things that dry out. And the color is white. Yeah. Okay. A little bit more. Okay. So water again. So the part of the plant is the seed of the plant. And it represents gestation, or things that are just sort of like sitting there waiting, right? Waiting to emerge, just before they emerge, but waiting to emerge. There's something going on, but you wouldn't know. It's so quiet, right? It's winter, and it's the part of the 5 spirits is the Z, okay? So, and we're going to talk about that too. We're going to continue to talk about that. Wood is the shoot, the thing that's just sprouting up. It's springtime, or sprouting. When you sprout things, that's a part of the wood element, and it's called the Hun. Okay, the five element corresponds to it. So the spirit the thing that enlivens it is called the hun. So this thing that enlivens water is the z. Okay, that's the spirit of water. The spirit of wood is hun, the hun. And fire is flower, the blossom, the full blossom, summer, and the shen. That's the shen is the spirit of fire, and the heart and small intestine. And the earth is actually the fruit, right? From after the blossoms drop off, then the fruit emerges, right? It's the harvest, right? And it's late summer, and it's called a yi. Okay? And metal is basically things that are composting, right? It's death, it's autumn, and it's called the po. But I want to say something about this death. It's death to live again, right? Because this is a cycle. This isn't like stopping, right? This is death to live again, right? This is necessary death. Things that need to die, right? Things that must compost in order for new life to spring forth again. And it's very mysterious, but and very kind of kind of transcendental, concept, but really great. Does anyone have any questions about the correspondences, the things that correspond to the hun? I mean, excuse me, not that. The things that correspond to the 5 spirits and the 5 elements.
Nancy, we have a couple questions.
Okay.
Ray asks, do people predominantly have a main elemental correspondence, or does it change? Like, is the water client example always a water element that sometimes experiences other elemental takeovers, or can that water person become a different element? And I just want to add that we talked about this from the Ayurvedic point of view a little bit yesterday in terms of people having the constitution that they're born with, and then how that change, that'll mostly remain consistent throughout their life, but then they may have different imbalances at different periods in their life. So
Yeah.
what's the 5 element version of that?
So I have not found that we change elements. Like we're predominant. We have more than one. We're all of these things, right? But we have a predominant one, right? And that's the thing that is the biggest part of who we are, right? We're more a metal type than anything, or more an earth type than anything, or more a water type than anything. And you will have what I would call secondary, right? You'll have your real metal with some water, or your real earth with some wood, right? And I have found that basic piece doesn't really go away. We're born into that, and it's like there's a lesson in it. There's a being in it. It's what we've grown up in. It's given to us, and we live in it, and we learn to live in it either in a balanced way or in an imbalanced way. So in that way, it is very similar to how Ayurveda says you're kind of this constitutional type, and you're either imbalanced in it or balanced in it. And I feel that it's very much the same here with 5 element theory. Would you agree, Leslie or Michael? I'm just kidding.
Yes, I do. I think you're doing a great job representing an impossible thing. But
I mean,
hopefully,
I think
it's going to rub off, and people are going to catch it as it flies by. But I look at this from the broader standpoint, which is society needs all of these elements, and just like we need a certain balance of male and female, and somehow or another on a social level, nature accounts for that. And when we start interfering with that process, like for instance, when the Chinese kill off all the females, and you have an imbalanced society. And the same thing happens if you're thinking about trying to manipulate fetuses and how they're going to behavior and things like that. All of a sudden, you're playing God, or God meaning nature, and I don't know that we're really ready to take that on, but it looks like here we go. But anyway, that's how I see it, is that we need these things. We need people who are the workers, and people who are the thinkers and dreamers, and people who are the ones that fuck everything up, and we need all of that in order to actually get on with it, in order to create movement. And
Yeah.
You know,
Beautiful.
Michael, Nancy, I think part of this also, the idea that you might have one element that is predominant in your personality and physiology, is also somewhat related to the ancestral chi that you inherit from your parents and grandparents and all of the previous generations that came before you.
Yes. Yes. There
yes,
is a bit of,
but I think it even goes beyond your own lineage. I think
yeah.
there's connections beyond our lineage that actually influence all of this stuff. But anyway, this is all wacky, wonderful thinking, and we can go on forever. And this is your class, and you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
We have a couple other questions also.
okay, great. I just want to say one more piece to that. When I felt like, and again, this is, and I don't mean to be like, this is how you're thinking, but I felt like when I first started learning this, I almost felt like, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that, I don't want to be that wood person. Or it can be a little like, it's, this part can be, we can moralize about it. We kind of be like, well, water sounds like or earth sounds so loving, and I want to be more earth-like, or fire sounds like so much fun. I want to be more like that. You are who you are, and our clients are who they are, right? And it's hard to step out of the judgment piece of it and the moralizing about it, and just sort of see it as it is. And just like Michael said, we're all these elements, all these energies are necessary for balance in the world, in our bodies. So, and again, going back all the way to here, like you back up into this, right? Like this goes back upwards as well as comes down to earth, right? All of these things are necessary. They're part of the whole, right? And it's hard. And that's the conversation around tolerance, right? Tolerance in ourselves for being a wood, right? Oh my God, I shout all the time, and I'm like working all the time, and I'm abrasive, and but you are who you are, right? And there's beauty in that, and owning that, and trying to find balance in that. So I think that's the question under the question, I think, but I could be wrong. So anyway,
No,
okay.
I think
If
you're
I
right.
could pitch something in for
Yes.
Yep.
5-element behavior like this, the metal element a lot of times is misunderstood. And the metal element is really the alchemist, which is what it's called by Ephraim and Harriet in Between Heaven and Earth. And the alchemist separates the dross from the gold.
Yeah.
And that's really what element types do. They might do it in an organizational manner, but they also do it spiritually. So this metal element can be the most misunderstood of all of them. I just have to give a shout out for metal elements.
Thank you. Coming from an incredibly metal person, Leslie is very metal, and I agree with you, Leslie.
Thank you.
It's mysterious. It's very mysterious. It's very beautiful, and it's my favorite time of year. But anyway, all right. And there were other questions. Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Let's see. Prajna comments, yes, that's what happens in Ayurveda class when everyone wants to be pitta. Haha.
Yeah.
And Susan Kramer is on the line, and she says yes to metal. And we've got a couple people, Nancy, guessing what your constitutional type is. So if you feel like sharing a little bit about your own constitutional type, people are conjecturing about that.
Yeah, we got you pegged already, Nancy.
Yeah. Tell me. So one thing I learned, never try and diagnose yourself ever.
Yeah.
Always reach out to other people and say, how do you see me? And try and take the coaching. It's very hard because we all have blinders about ourselves. And I learned early on, never try and treat yourself, never diagnose yourself and never treat yourself. So even when it comes to 5 elements, you know, I walk around thinking I'm a wood type. Like I'm like go, do. I'm a rah, rah, you know, like I'm like, I feel like I'm loud and mean and abrasive and, you know, it's like, you know, but that's not who I am, right? So go ahead, tell me who you think I am.
And you know, you actually bring up a really good clinical point. I think that's something that we often need to remind ourselves about, you know, not trying to diagnose and treat ourselves, and also having a layer of awareness when we're looking at our immediate family members, because we can often lose objectivity for the people who are closest to us, and we got to proceed cautiously if we're going to try and diagnose and treat the people who are closest to us.
That's really well said. Thank you, Sheila, for that. That is very true. Lots of early students use friends and family, but be careful. Just try and be open. Try not. This is difficult. Treating friends is easier than family. So I would go to friends first. You'll see them better. You'll see them clearer, and you'll be able to help them more. When you go to treat family, make sure you've done a lot of personal work first. You can get really lost in your, you know, your fixed ideas about your family members versus really seeing them clearly for who they are. But I absolutely, as much as I've tried to understand my own element, I don't know. I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're a fire." I've had people tell me you're a metal. I've had people tell me you're a wood. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I do my best. Go ahead. This is a great exercise. Go ahead. Type in who you think. What type do you think I am? I can take the coaching.
All right. If people want to comment on that, Fatima says fire. And then separately, Lauren asks, where does air/wind fit in? And Lauren, I'm not sure what that is in reference to. So if you want to clarify that. Karen also says, Nancy, fire.
So wind is metal, right? Wind is metal. Yeah.
Okay.
Air and wind. Yeah. Air. So I always say, you know, air, lungs, you know, gas, large intestine, passing air, passing gas, large intestine. Yeah. That's how I remember it. It's a little silly, I know. It's a little crass, I know, but it keeps me entertained. Okay, so now we have all these concepts. We have these beautiful philosophies. They're magical, right? They're universal, right? They're majestic. And now we're gonna bring them down, right? We're gonna look at the mountain of Tao as the self, right? And I chose this image because, you know, this is the Tao, right? And this is the self. You know, we're a mirror of this knowledge. We're a mirror of these energies. These energies exist, and so here we are. So the Shen is insight, inspiration, and dreams, right? Things, you know, when you meet people and they're so inspiring, we have a long time part of our clan. His name is Tom Dadant, and he's a very dear friend of mine, and I adore him to pieces. And when he speaks, I'm like, I follow him around like a puppy dog because he's so inspiring. Everything he says, he's just like this. He's also really fun and silly too, and can be quite a jokester and a prankster, but he's so inspiring when he's talking about herbs and talking about health and healing. And he has so much of that, you know, that enlivened Shen, as I would call it. And then the Hun is imagination and vision and planning. You know, those people who are like, you know, every morning they wake up and they have a to-do list as long as their left leg, and it's like, whoa, they are gonna plan their day, plan their work and work their plan every day. They're just so organized, right? And they have vision, and they have goals, and They're going to make it happen. That's the Hun. That's the spirit of the Hun. And the Yi is planting seeds and intention and direction and centering, right? Anytime you put a seed in the ground, or anytime you kind of like, hey, Jim, what do you think about this? That's the spirit of the Yi. And the Po as will and faith and incubation. It's this kind of mysterious place of just before you have some direction, or just before you have some intention. There's this impulse. There's this very quiet thing inside, that kind of an energy that kind of pushes you like this, and all of a sudden you're going, right? So that's the Po. And the Z is manifestation. You are because you are. It is because it is, right? Very, very esoteric. Most of the time, I'm not like living in that, but I know it's there, and it's really great to know that it's there. So you have heaven at the top of the mountain. You have the mind, the body, the deep unconscious, the underworld of collective unconsciousness, and matter, right? The hearth, the matter. It's at the very bottom. Matter is, right? Yeah, we exist. We exist here. And there is a collective unconsciousness that binds us all together. Okay. Alrighty, now we're going to move into really fun stuff. All of this is really applicable. Oh, and I have this, I'm sorry, on this huge red-tailed hawk that just flew right in front of my window. I was like, wow, we're going to talk about the Shen, and a hawk comes by. That's nice. I love that.
Wow.
Talk about being completely like, wow. Thank you.
Hey, just a quick time check. My clock says 10:48, so we've got about approximately 12 minutes before our scheduled break.
Okay, so I do want to get through Shen before we go into our break, because we have quite a few slides to get through. And we can move through these pretty good, but let's do this and then we'll take a 15-minute break.
Great,
So
thank you.
Shen, the heart is the center of the spiritual realm. The Shen is the place of heaven. The element is fire. We talked about that. The organ is heart and small intestine. So remember, if people come to you and say, I have SIBO, okay, we're gonna go, oh, the heart element, the Shen, right? Something is there. They've lost their joy, right? There's definitely something going on there. There's a psychological piece to that, right? Inspiration, insight, awareness. They're blocked. They've lost their inspiration somehow. So I love the cosmological associations like starlight and lightning. So this is a really weird thing. So when I was first learning this, I'm a very kinesthetic learner. So I'd read it and I'd go, okay, how do I get this in me? It's like, I got it in here. How do I get it here, right? So I thought, well, what do I do if I want to support my Shen? Why don't I go lay out under the stars, right? So in the summer, that's what I do. Sometimes I think, oh, I don't have any inspiration. I don't feel inspired. I'm going to lay out under the stars. Or the other thing that I love to do, this is like, I love doing this. This is kind of a weird thing, but this is so me, right? I'll go hang out in a lightning storm. And that smell of the lightning, that it just purifies everything. It's like incredible. And it really charges. You can feel the hair on your skin standing up. Yeah, that's kind of a great thing to do. And and I have given this as exercise for people, like body care, or like exercises to help balance the element. Like what I really want you to do is I want you to go lay out under the stars tonight, and just stare at them. And if you don't know why you're doing it, that's okay. Just do it anyway. So, some of these things that you're seeing here on the slide, you can actually use them as ways to help them balance that particular element or spirit. It's the 7th chakra. It's the 1,000-petal lotus, the enlightened mind, the connection with heaven. The alchemical virtues of the Shen are love and compassion, right? Love, mostly love, just love and being inspired, right? So when shens are disturbed, right? When the shen is disturbed, there's insomnia, there's anxiety, there might even be palpitations. They can't concentrate. The mind is all over the place, right? They're just like, I can't even think straight, right? They might be a little timid, or that might not actually, they can be just full on timid, right? Like really timid. They look at their shoes. They don't want to look at you. They might look at you like fervently, you know, but it also could just mean that they're not standing up for themselves. They don't have courage, right? They don't have courage even in little ways, right? They definitely get startled easily. Someone will walk in the room and they'll go like that, and they'll be like, oh, why did you startled me, right? They might talk, but not say anything. Like they're just talking away, blah, 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 and it means nothing, right? They're talking out of anxiety. In the most severe Shen disturbances, you'll have bipolar, schizophrenia. They may even be incoherent. They'll be restless. They'll be hyperactive. They may even get, diagnosed with ADHD, and go to the heart, go to the Shen, and see if it's really there. So possible causes, some are constitutional, right? Again, that's the whole thing about being a fire person or being a metal person or being a wood person, right? It's like, that's the work. It's like, how do you embrace who you are, right? And how do you find balance in that element, right? So they call these what we call narcissistic injuries. Narcissistic injuries meaning that the very closest people to the person injured them very early in life. So a parent who couldn't understand or see that child for who they were, inhibiting them, inhibiting the expression of the true nature of that child, especially if they're a fire child, they're going to be exuberant, right? And if you have a a wood parent who's out of balance, who's like angry and like, can you just go to work and stop fooling around, or something like that, but all the time, and it can be worse than that, it can be beatings, there could be, it can be really damaging, that their heart's going to be damaged, the Shen's going to be damaged, and the Shen, the spiritual Shen, will be damaged. So trauma, shock, abuse, trauma and shock can really damage the Shen, right? So there can be a lack of coherence to this person's life, such as they don't feel like they're living their true life. They feel like they're living this life, and it's not who they are. And if you ever hear someone say that, just write down somewhere in your notes, possible Shen disturbance, right? They may not even feel unique. They may feel like and they may even be like ambivalent, like, yeah, who cares, whatever. And if you hear them saying that all the time, possible Shen disturbance. They may not feel inspired at all. They may feel very flat. They may have a flat affect, AFFECT, not affect, but flat affect. Or they may even say, I'm just so uninspired in my job or my life. I just feel very flat, right? So if they don't have enough inspiration and activity, they turn to anxiety and restlessness. And then that anxiety and restlessness can sometimes bring them into fatigue. And if the Shen is very disturbed and there's been damage early in life, and even more if they're a Shen, if they are a fire type and the Shen has been damaged, they have no way of getting inspired, but they have no way of getting connected to their connection with the heavens, right? So it's very hard for them to grow spiritually, right? And they can't tell false from true, real from unreal. They just can't. They don't have that ability to separate the good from the bad, which is the small intestine, right? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say about this before our break.
Nancy, a quick question for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Ray asks, is a Shen disturbance lacking due in part to an excess in water?
I mean, you can have a co-cycle issue where a part of that, cycle is inhibiting the Shen. Yes, that's a possibility. So remember, fear and shock, right? Fear and shock and abuse from the kidneys, right, over on the heart. It really does work that way, right? Cortisol, epinephrine, just this shock, that thing that happens can damage the heart. It absolutely happens, right? Recreational drugs that make you absolutely manic can damage the heart and the Shen. So yes, that co-cycle absolutely exists here.
Right. You're
So
also touching on a physiological correlation or parallel where the water element is related to the kidneys, and there's the kidney organ meridian system as we understand it in TCM 5-element philosophy, but that also has a little bit of a correlation to the Western physiology where the kidney physical organ would be inclusive of the adrenal glands sitting on top of the kidneys, the adrenal
yeah,
glands producing cortisol.
yeah, right. It exists on all those levels. So from all the way up here to all the way down into the body, yeah, that you can see that co-cycle inhibition, from the water, kidney, adrenal gland on the kidney, damaging the heart. Yeah, absolutely. That's the trauma shock piece, right? Yeah.
And
So
then
very good.
Elizabeth says, Shen disturbance happens not only in childhood, right? It can happen at any time during someone's life, adulthood,
Anytime,
etc. Yeah.
anytime. The only reason why I mentioned, kind of underscored, the whole thing in childhood is because that damage is a little bit harder. So if you have a client coming in and something like that happens, say for example, they could be any element. They can have a Shen disturbance and be a wood. They can have a Shen disturbance and be a metal. But if they're a fire element and have a Shen disturbance and it happened in childhood, you got some work to do. So do you see how that builds on itself? And what's really cool about this just is when you back up into the 5 elements, right? Instead of just getting lost in the pattern and what did they get and what was their diagnosis and if you back up, do you see how much help this is to getting a bigger picture and helping your people so much, even just from here, is really, really magical. 5 elements it has a universality to it, and it has a quality of timelessness, and it works at all levels. Every time I turn around, I go, oh my God, that's a 5-element thing. Like, how did that happen? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such
Very.
an elegant system.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful word. Thank you for that word. Elegant. Thank you. Okay, let's take about a 15-minute break and we'll come back and we'll do some more.
Great. All right, 15 minutes, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we are at 11:15. Just a quick housekeeping note. Jill Unger asks everyone to please be sure and check your spam folders. She is sending out emails pretty much every day, sending out video recordings. So make sure that those aren't going to your junk file. I just want to remind everybody that while it's great that we can do this seminar online via webinar, that does add up to kind of a lot of screen time. So just make sure that you're taking care of your physical body as we're sitting in front of the screen. Take some big deep breaths, stretch your arms up over your head, and do what you need to do. When you're done with the webinars, try and go out and do some long distance gazing to compensate for the screen gazing. So that's my little note.
That's excellent.
And I think we're back.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna put the pedal to the metal here so we can kind of get through this. So the hun messages between the Shen and the Yi. The Yi is what we're going to talk about next. So the hun shifts its energy and it moves its energy between heaven and earth. So does that kind of make sense? That's basically the energy of it, is like this, you know, and like trees, you know, they have their they have their roots in the ground and their, you know, their branches towards heaven. So that is the energy of the Hun. And again, element, just as part of this is review. Again, wood, liver and gallbladder, motion, anger. A psychological function is vision, imagination, decision making, right? Like, oh, I got to make a decision. I read some incredible scientific study that was done by Harvard University in exercise physiology that basically said that it takes an enormous amount of energy to make decisions. And so that they recommended that athletes that were about ready to perform not to make any decisions at all. Like never, like it takes so much energy to make a clear decision, right? And I think all of us kind of experience that, but those who literally can't make a decision at all, you know, something's aberrating the Hun. The cosmological association, of course, is cloud, mist, tree branches. Clouds, of course, are part of the heaven, right? Mists are around the ground and on the tops of the water. So it's that mist and that kind of like accumulation of energy between the earth and the sky. The chakra is the third eye. It's perception, clear perception, right? And its alchemical virtues are benevolence and justice. So that when the Hun is disturbed, so this is what it kind of looks like. The person is angry. There's like one injustice after another, right? They like feel like there's brick walls everywhere. I can't get anywhere with anyone, right? And right. There's so much unfairness. This person's always unfair to me. I'm subordinate to them, and they're just not fair to me. And there's injustice everywhere. There's people taking advantage of animals and people taking advantage of the earth. And I'm angry about it and upset about it, and I feel like I can't get anywhere with that. And they express very extreme emotions. They're outward with that. They have anger outbursts, and they can be just kind of destructive of their environment. So that's the excess part. And then the deficiency part, so if there's excess in the Hun, that's what it's like. And then when there's deficiency, they're like timid or don't speak their mind or don't speak up at all. They have thoughts inside and they repress it. They're depressed. They can be confused. They can act confused all the time. They actually have no emotional expression. It's like knock knock, anybody there? Right? They're like nothing's there. They'll be weak in body and mind, meaning they can't make a decision to save themselves, right? Which you can tell makes me crazy, right? It's like, please make a decision. But when there's a deficiency in the Hun, they're unable to do that, right? They can't start new projects. They might think about it, but they just can't get that. There's a disturbance. They're unable to kind of mount the energy to do that. A mixed combination of excess deficiency, Hun, will show up as often like in women with PMS and menstrual disturbances. When the liver is disturbed, the Hun flies away and the soul becomes confused and disorganized. And that's very true, right? Very true. A little few other things about the Hun. So some common symptoms that you might see, pardon me, I'm having a little, the trees are blooming, it's just starting to bloom, and I have a little thing going on here with them. Just took the dogs outside and I'm like, wow, lots of tree pollen. Okay. So Hun, common symptoms: depression, insomnia, with either like incredible dreams, like dreaming in technicolor, sometimes disturbing, or complete absence of dreams. So you can tell which one's excess and which one's deficiency, right? Some people say, I never remember my dreams, right? Erratic emotions. One day, one They feel one way, the next day another. They're disorganized and they're disoriented. That's a disturbance of the Hun. They might oversleep. They might sleep 12, 13 hours a day and get up and just not feel right. They feel tired still. So the anxiety that shows up with a Hun versus a Shen disturbance, there's a different quality to it. So, with a Shen disturbance, the anxiety is obvious, right? With a Hun disturbance, the anxiety is a little understated, but it's like this thing rolling underneath the soil, right? That's what it's like. They'll have digestive disturbances, and they definitely can't see clearly. They can't see what to do next in their life, right? They can't. They may even have really poor vision. They may actually lose their vision, or their vision might suddenly get really bad. And they'll definitely have outbursts of anger, right? They'll feel like they're running into brick walls. They can't get anywhere. They start projects and never finish them. They wander aimlessly, like if they go shopping, and even if they have a list, they'll just start wandering aimlessly, around. They don't have any color to their life. It's just kind of, like that. So causes, possible causes. Okay, constitutional, repressed emotional anger. Repressed frustration, not allowed to express healthy anger, not allowed to express healthy frustration. Exposure to violence, drug abuse, alcoholism in the family. That is something that can very much damage the Hun. And a lack of guidance from family, especially parents, like, where parents just sort of like, well, you'll figure it out, right? Instead of like, here, sit down, let's talk about this. Let's learn what discernment is and try and figure out if we can make good decisions together, like modeling that. If they didn't have that, and if they're a wood person and they didn't get that, it's gonna make it even worse. Recreational drug use, I have to say, this is a big issue with disturbing the Hun, because it's toxin, but you can have mercury toxicity, you can have aluminum toxicity, you could have pesticide toxicity, and that alone, exposure to environmental toxins, can very much disturb the Hun. I do want to say something about marijuana, because we have all this, cannabis is a plant, right? And we even actually use cannabis in traditional Chinese medicine, but we use it really different. We don't smoke it that way. So the abuse of marijuana, just like the abuse of alcohol or the abuse of anything, even herbs, like we don't want to be abusive with our herbs either. We want to make sure that when we're using our herbs and we've matched the patterns and we have it quite right, and the person is using them with respect and understanding that it's helping them get into balance. But like that kind of abuse, it's hard on the liver and it's hard on the Hun, and it can disturb the Hun. And how you really see it is the person's completely disorganized. They can't get out of their own way, right? They might start something and they'll never finish it, or they'll talk a little bit about it and they'll never start it. So that's where we really see a disturbed Hun. Okay. Moving on to the Yi. I think they say Yu or Yi, but I say Yi. Okay. Yi is the earth element. It's the spleen and the stomach, or the digestive power, together between the spleen, or i.e. pancreas, and the stomach. It's the digestive power of our bodies. The emotion is worry and sympathy. Those worry types are always worrying. Setting intention and gestation of ideas, or implantation of ideas, like having ideas and having that piece where you're thinking about something, with clear intention. So soil, fields, gardens, that's the association. Lots of plants. We have a lot of earth types as herbalists. That makes sense, right? The chakra is the third, it's the navel chakra. And the virtue is devotion, right? Really lovely. Signs and symptoms of a yi disturbance: obsessive thoughts, repetitive, invasive thoughts, worry, obsession, brooding, thought and cognition with insufficient movement. So they're thinking, and they're frozen like this, like deer in the headlights. Okay, so that is a very, sometimes I see that, a person will sit down in front of me and just they'll be like this, and the deer in the headlights. They're not fearful, but it's like like, huh, overwhelm, right? That is a yi thing. Over nurturing of others to avoid one's own responsibility to growth, especially spiritual and or physical. Muddled thinking, can't order their thoughts. They can't create a logical outcome. Lots of times with eating disorders, there's eating disorders with a yi disturbance. There's anorexia, there's bulimia, they might be binging, they might be overeating. So there's a lot of that goes on with the disturbance of the yi. And the spiritual signs is they can't transform or transmute their thoughts into actions or commitments. Okay, again, like deer in the headlights, like not fear, but like like, I don't know what to do. I can't even think, right? That. Codependency in early childhood and exposure to alcoholism and family dysfunction can create imbalances. Of course, improper eating habits, anemia and vitamin deficiency can send you into a yi imbalance. And that can be that can happen in utero too. So if the mother isn't eating correctly or eating really nourishing food, the child could be born with a yi disturbance. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Exhaustion, long-term stress and strain. So the liver and the heart might be under incredible strain, and then the digestion just kind of like, just there's nothing there, right? You can't take it in, you can't transform it, you can't transmute it. Nothing can go in because there's no ability to transform and transmute. Okay, the Po. I know I'm moving a little quicker, and I'll take your questions when we're finished with this section, because I just want to make sure we get through everything by it's about an hour. We have an hour left. So, okay, the Po. This is the metal element. This is the one that Leslie says is mysterious. It definitely has some incredible mystery to it. This is lungs and large intestine. The emotion is grief or sadness. Psychological function, animal wit, right? Sensation in the body, embodied knowing. So this is, when she said it's alchemical, it's true. It's like I just know, and it's there, right? And animal wit is like, it's like, it's not predetermined. It isn't like, well, I sat down and wrote out my comedy skit, right? It's like, it's just there, right? It's like this thing that you embody. Associations would be stones, gems, minerals, labyrinths, right? Things that are mysterious and alchemical and deeply spiritual and philosophical. This is the second chakra. It's matter, right? It's it's the earth pressing on this material to make diamonds, right? That's matter. And the virtue is the appreciation of what is precious, right? That understanding of what should be preserved as precious versus the dying off of things that are unnecessary, right? The separating the wheat from the chaff. Signs of Po disturbances: chronic tension and pain, it like almost untreatable tension and pain, obsessions, anxiety, pain and more pain, right? Some eating disorders, usually it's anorexia with Po, undiagnosable lumps and benign tumors, skin problems like acne and psoriasis and eczema, asthma, bowel disturbances, restlessness during the day, clouded mind, impaired balance and movement or coordination, so the loss of that. And we see this too, like in the elderly, because of course, you know, the lungs are the princess, we call them the princess organ, and so they get damaged very easily. Of course, we're seeing that with upper respiratory infections and that kind of thing. They're a very delicate organ, and so as we age, the lungs, you know, age very rapidly, and so we see that impaired balance and movement in older age. So that element is taking a hit, as the saying goes. So spiritual signs, man, I just can't put my finger on it, but something isn't right. Something isn't right with me, or I feel like something's wrong with me, but I don't know why. That's a spiritual po. That is a po out of balance. There's something wrong with that, you know, the spirit of the lungs and large intestine. They'll have physical pain, and it takes over their entire life. And they can't find a diagnosis, and they can't find resolution. And I've seen this. My brother this is his thing. You know, he has had pain his whole life, and it's like nobody can help him. He sometimes gets relief, and then sometimes not, right? In a very, very extreme sensitivity to influences. They can be psychic. Exactly. This is exactly true. This is so true. And I've met so many people who are psychic, and they have all this other pain, and they're very sensitive to the world, and it's really incredible. So there's a disturbance there. Whoops, it's not spelled right. Can we fix that right now? Unexpressed somaticized emotional issues, like stuck destiny, right? There's something emotional that's not right, and it hasn't been dealt with, and it's stuck in the body, and it's causing this pain. Chronic pain that doesn't respond to standard treatment, structural imbalances, recent traumas, serious medical problems that they've ruled them out. It's like they call it idiopathic, right? If you ever hear that, if you're not in medicine and you hear idiopathic, blah, 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 it's like, we don't know what's causing this. We know it's there, but we don't have a cause, so they can't figure it out. Chronic emotional stress, deep psychological issues in the person's history, sometimes going all the way back to childhood, but not just childhood. Sometimes there can be this really odd lack of connectedness. Like they can be really, really connected, but there's something always held back, right? There's like maybe a mist or a cloudiness about the person. Like you can't just put your finger on it. You're thinking to yourself, they seem really, really nice. They seem really connected, and yet they don't. And the person's mind is really, really not at ease. Now, some of the causes for all of this sounds really intense, doesn't it? And it can be. It really can. When the PO is damaged, or if there's some issue where there's a deranged PO, it can look like a really incredible case. I get a lot of these kinds of cases because I get referrals for what we call the difficult to treat cases. That's kind of my thing. And so I see a lot of PO disturbances, a lot of them. Sometimes some of the causes would be maternal, right? Mother had really poor vitamin and nutrient deficiencies during the gestation of the child. Sometimes it could just be that the child didn't have any touch. They were never hugged as children. They didn't have any tactile touch stimulation. Maybe they were sick. Maybe they had a respiratory issue and they were put into an incubator and they weren't touched. They weren't allowed to be touched. Babies who are being born right now during COVID-19, nobody's touching them, right? Especially if the mother is positive. So, we may see some real serious PO disturbances from this, right? So very restrictive childbearing practices that didn't allow the freedom of that child's expression and or bodily movement. But really, again, a lot of oppression in the child. Ancestral family issues where they swept everything under the rug. Nothing wrong here, right? There isn't a pink elephant in the room at all, whatever that is. Or abuse, whether it's abuse as an adult, physical abuse, generally with pain. Early childhood abuse where the child completely forgets what that had even happened. What are you talking about? I had a abusive childhood. I don't know what you're talking about. I had a beautiful childhood. They have no idea that they were sexually abused. You'll see huge imbalances in the organs that are related to the PO, such as the large intestine and the lungs. So later on, if those things didn't really happen in childhood, or, you know, if that psychological piece, it can also, you know, PO imbalances can be like the refusal of someone to really look at themselves and look at the shadow side of themselves, right? That they want to be all goodness and light all the time, and that they're unwilling to say, hey, I'm not so good in this department, or yeah, I have a tendency to be like, you know, be a little iconoclastic, and, you know, I'll push people away because I just want my privacy, and, you know, and instead of, you know, instead of really saying, owning, like we all have a shadow side, they absolutely won't. And so you can, just from that alone, you can have a PO disturbance, right? You know, goodness, light, perfect, I'm perfect, I'm good to everybody, you know, and they don't deny the deeper layers of all of our emotions and all of our sides, the shadow side, right? And sometimes we can have a PO disturbance because we're resisting life's changes, right? That are crucial to our ability to develop and to reach our destiny. So those are all the things that can kind of contribute to a disturbed PO. And for Zur, element, the element, of course, is water, kidneys and bladder, emotion is fear. We already did this, but I'm just, you know, kind of covering it again. So the psychological functions will be instinctual power, right? It's called will and courage. It's like you get up and you're like, I'm doing that, right? Nothing's stopping me. I know it's going to be hard. I don't care. I'm doing it. That's courage and will. And like, you know, I really need to say this to this person, and I know it's going to be hard, and I want to say it in a really good way, but I need to say it, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, but it has to be said. That's courage. That's right. That's water, right? Psychological issues, surrendering to the Tao, right? Returning to the origin, forgetting. You know, when the Zur gets disturbed, it's because you forget. We forget that we're, you know, we're part of that, the ocean of oneness, the universal, you know, that whatever that is, that thing that really binds us all together. When you lose that, you know, when you forget and you don't surrender, that is what we are. You know, we will again enter the ocean of everything, and we will lose our own separation and identification. We believe that and go back to the big ocean of unknowing, right? That is the root chakra. That is, right? That is the first and the root chakra. And you know, psychological issues, you know, is that we disconnect from that knowledge, right? Whatever you call it, whatever it is for you, you know, whatever it's God, or it doesn't matter, you know, you have your term for that. And when the water element gets out of balance, when the Zur gets out of balance, when this spirit gets out of balance, it's because we've lost that connection to that. And the virtue is wisdom, like not knowledge, wisdom, real wisdom. And signs and symptoms of Zur disturbances is forgetfulness, like real serious forgetfulness. We call it dementia, right? Can't memorize things. Like you're like, I'm gonna memorize this thing, and then you're like, I can't. It's like a sieve, right? Lack of drive, lack of motivation, no initiative. Can't pursue your goals. You're just like frozen water, right? Addictive patterns, lack of willpower, can't overcome. Like you set a goal and you like, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Depression, fear. It's fear kind of depression. This is frozen, right? Kind of fear. Not like, I'm a little afraid of that, but I'm going to try. Not like that. It's like frozen. Sleep disturbances. These are like up all night, right? Not a I can fall asleep, but I wake at 2 or 3 in the morning. Or it's hard for me to get to sleep, but once I'm asleep, I'm fine. These kinds of water element zero disturbances are like, they are up all night like this, eyeballs, right? Staring at the ceiling for the entire night. And then sexual disturbances, either way, like excessive or not at all. So these are the disturbances of the element, the spirit that ignites water element, right? So again, lack of courage, some despair, lack of hope, can't face your fears, just like frozen. That's the word, right? Water that just absolutely becomes, you know, unable to move. These people, when they're out of balance here, they're evasive, they'll circumvent things, they'll try and get out from underneath things, right? Sometimes they'll be a little manipulative, again, because they're absolutely fearful, and they're like, I'm not doing that, I want to figure out how to get out from under this, you know. So their nervous systems will break down. You know, you'll see a lot of Parkinson's in MS with a disturbance. Drug abuse, again, I think drug abuse is kind of a problem for just about every spirit, right? And repression of instinctual, like, impetus, not just inspiration, but like this instinctual piece of us, the wisdom within all of us. We all have our own wisdom, right? And when you repress that, you don't listen to that, that's when you can really get out of balance here in this spirit. Spiritual paralysis or a lack of spirituality. So some causes, you know, extreme overwork, excessive physical activity. This is really true. This water element can really become whacked out with excessive exercise, marathon running, biking, weightlifting, but to the extreme. Chronic disease. I see a lot of these people. Yeah, I see a lot of these people. Addictive behavior, including excessive sexual activity, chronic fear, chronic anxiety, childhood issues, multiple births. This one's very real. I've seen, you know, women who've had 5, 6, 8, 10 children, you know, more, sometimes twins. And they had, you know, what we call Irish twins, you know, children year after year after year after year, no rest, no ability to nourish themselves and put themselves back together. And sometimes even a birth when there's excessive blood loss, you'll see this get out of balance. And a lack of proper boundaries and encouragement to be their own being in childhood. So that all of those would feed into kind of a disturbed. I apologize for my dogs barking. They're hearing things outside, and I've locked myself in my office, and they're like, "Where's mommy? Nobody's taking care of us." Talk about fear. Okay, I'm gonna change the screen, and we're gonna kind of move into clinical application here. But does anyone have any wild, outstanding questions about? Oh, I know that was a lot of material all at once, and you may actually have questions that come up after this, and please email, email the school, email, Jill, and she can either, or you can email me. I'm happy to try and answer them if I'm the right person to answer them. But this is incredible material, and there's a lot of material. And I know I'm just kind of like giving it to you like this. So in this
Nancy,
format.
we've got a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
Let's see. A couple of different students were wondering if there was a slide for signs and symptoms for Yi.
Oh, did I not have that up? Hold on a second. The Yi. Signs and symptoms. Yeah, right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can
Slide number
review the
14.
slide real quickly.
Yeah, I'll leave it up for a second.
All right. And then let's see. Lauren asks, Can you be a je person but have a po imbalance or disturbance?
Yes, you can be, so you can be a water person and have, absolutely, and have, you can have a, you know, a Shen disturbance. You can be a water or Zi person, right? And have a Po imbalance. Absolutely. Yeah. We aren't just one element. We have uh, we we have a predominance, or we have an element that is kind of like the big element. But then we have these other elements that are part of us. We either learn them, or they're, or they're, or or we're born with them too. So we're not always just one, and we can have imbalances in any of those other spirits. Absolutely. And we can have more than one imbalance in different spirits.
Okay. Let's see, we've got a comment from Darcia. Are you familiar with the Enneagram? Several of the characteristics sound familiar to Enneagram types.
Yes.
And then we've got a couple of people who are a little bit confused about the slides that we're looking at. Are there specifically 2 slides for each of these Shen, Hun, Yi, Po, and Zhi that we're talking about? Or did some of them only have 1 slide?
Some of them only had 1 slide.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess some of the material I put on this, I don't know, I guess maybe it's just me. I just felt like there was excuse me for 1 minute. I'm so sorry. Honey, please, honey. Mama's working. I know you're very hungry. I'll be out in a second, okay? And I'm right here. Okay. This is the one problem with not working with home. Hi, baby girl. No, go ahead. Come here. I know, I'm right here. I'm just teaching. Please go outside. Go outside. I'll come feed you in about an hour, okay? I love you. Be a good girly. Okay, sorry about that. She's very upset with me.
Oh.
All
right.
So I had some of them I had 1 slide, and some of them I had a couple slides, because there was just like the Hun, the liver does so much, right? And there was just this mountain of material, and I tried to get it in 1 slide and it didn't quite work. So I didn't mean to confuse you by that. I did the best I could. Yeah.
I think we're all caught up.
Okay, good.
A couple other questions. Just a technical note, so everybody on the listening end knows there's a little bit of a technical delay, so I don't always see your questions immediately in the moment. Sometimes they show up a minute later. Let's see, Caitlin is asking, what if one has more than one of these disturbances? Which one do you deal with first? And Hannah asks, feeling stuck and not being able to move forward was a characteristic of both Hun and Zhi. How do you determine the difference?
Yeah, so those are great questions, and they have to do with how we determine our clinical treatment. Our kind of our treatment program, and I'm going to answer that in a few seconds here. There's always so the first rule of thumb when you're like working in this way is treat what you see, right, first. So, but also, yeah, the whole story has to be there. So I know our minds are a little bit reductionistic, and we kind of grab onto this like one thing, and we say, well, both of these have this. But if you look at the whole picture, that particular issue is defined by all the other pieces, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. We're going to talk about, how do you make a decision on, which spirit is out of balance the most to start with, right? If you have more than one spirit out of balance. And then, right, how to make sure that you take all the information to really make the decision, a clear decision about which spirit, or if you will, element is the thing that you need to focus on first, and it may be that you need to work with two at the same time, but let's make it simple. We're in foundation, so let's just try and work with the thing that is the most out of balance, that is showing up in everything. When you're doing your intake, right, you have to cover all these questions, right? We call it an interrogation, but it's your intake, right? And you have all these questions. So when you make that final decision, that decision has to include all the information that you brought in, not just this one little piece of imbalance. So, but we'll get to that, and you're going to be great at it. Because the school is so great in making sure that happens, that you can make those determinations. Just take the information in right now, and then we'll get to how do you apply it. We're going to do that within 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Okay, so we're going to do this first part, and then we're going to move on into how do you make the determination of what to treat when.
A couple quick comments. We love that we love your dogs and love that you love them so much. And comment, seems like I'm disturbed in all of these, someone says.
Oh, right. As you get older, it's true. As you get older, the wear and tear of life, right? And you start to see imbalances in a lot of your organs and systems. But and that's why you don't treat yourself, and that's why you don't diagnose yourself and you don't treat yourself, because if we were being honest with ourselves, we would see areas of weaknesses and strengths in all of the elements inside of ourselves, right? I mean, when I sit down and I take an inventory of what's really working and what's really not, every single element is involved in that conversation. That's why I'm not allowed to diagnose myself and not allowed to treat myself, right? Somebody else does that. But the truth of it is that that's real. When you're being honest with yourself, you do see the strengths and the weaknesses and the possible aberrations in each one of those spirits and organs. So so that's beautiful. That's beautiful that you can kind of go, wow, I can see where I'm weak here. But also you have to say to yourself, I can also see where I'm strong here too. But yes, that's wonderful. And always, if you think that something's really out of whack, you should reach out to your colleagues, right? Or see Leslie and Michael. They'll sort it out for you for sure. I've been there. So, okay, a little bit more on the correspondences, just a little bit more fill-in information. Fire, speech, right? Opens to the tongue, right? Includes the blood vessels and our complexion, right? That thing that gives us that shining pink in our face, right? And the time of day for fire is 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. and then 7 p.m. until 11 p.m. And that's the triple burner. 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. is the triple burner. 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. is the heart and the small intestine. And the earth is the taste, how it tastes, or our taste. It's our flesh on our body. It's the lips, right? And the earth opens to the mouth. And the time during the day is 7 a.m. until 11 a.m., right? And that's the stomach and the spleen, also known as the pancreas. So, right, 7 a.m. till 11 a.m. So, and it's both those organs together. Okay. Metal, and that's another reason why that conversation of if you really want to support the stubbing of the spleen, you have to eat in the morning, right? You want to eat before 11 a.m. You want to eat something good and nourishing, and that's going to be great for your body. Metal is smell, right? It opens to the nose. It's our skin. And it's also the hair on our body, right? It can be really rough or fine, or, some people have incredible biliary experiences, right? So how to explain that is, they walked into a room and their hair stood on the hair on their skin stood up. If you're that kind of person that kind of has that, it's like a third sense, you'll meet somebody and, it's like the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you're like, woo, that's a metal experience, right? That's a metal issue. So 3 a.m. until 7 a.m. So lungs and large intestine. So you have your big BM in the morning when you get up first thing, and the lungs, a lot of people get up early or between 3 and 4 and meditate and do breathing exercises. That's a really good time of the day to nourish the lungs. The water is hearing, your ears, opens to the ears, includes our bones, and the hair on our head, right? And how we can grow our hair. And the time of day is 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. So it's kidneys and bladder. So if you're one of those people like at 3 in the afternoon, it's like, I gotta go lie down. Something's up with your water element. Wood is sight, right? The eyes, it opens to the eyes. It's the muscles and ligaments, right? It's the sinews of the body. And it's you can see it in the nails, the toenails and the fingernails, right? Ridges, yellowing, that kind of thing. And that's 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. And for those people who like, that's my best time to work, it's like, that's interesting, and if they're not going to bed and they're going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, they're really putting a lot of pressure on the liver and the gallbladder's ability to restore itself, right? So these are cool because I write these down all the time in my notes in an intake. And, I'll ask them, well, do you have a lot of, how are you between 11 and 3? If I think there's something going on with their heart and small intestine, I'll ask them, how are you? Do you have a lot of energy? Do you get a lot accomplished? Or are you like pooped or hungry all the time or whatever it is, right? So I'll use these as checkpoints, like going back and corroborating where I think their constitutional type is and where I think the pattern, the pattern is developing. And I'll use these correspondences to kind of corroborate where I think, the treatment strategy should go. Okay, so translating all this great philosophy into, therapeutic concepts, right? So when the ancient Chinese physicians spoke of the elements, they meant it. They meant it not just above, but so is below. And they do these, these all fit here with blocked water and blocked wood and blocked fire and blocked earth and blocked metal. And again, we're chunking them down into these separate pieces. But those of you who are saying, but what if there's an overlap? There will be an overlap. I guarantee you, right? Because we're all of these things. Big secret. Not as easy as this, but we're simplifying again to learn it. But then what happens is, you'll finesse it, and then you'll get the overlapping and the weaving of these elements together. So they're both real and in the material world, and they're psychological, and they're spiritual, and they're symbolic, like the chi of life, right? Okay, okay, blocked water, chilly hands and feet, never get warm, can't get their feet, and they go to bed with socks on their feet, right? They pull their sleeves down over their hands like this. They can never get their hands warm, right? They have urinary tract issues, or they have fatigue issues. They'll have this like ache in their lower back. Sometimes they have like full-blown back issues, right? Like just can't get resolution on back issues, but definitely lower back aches and lower back pain. They'll have knee pain or knee problems that really are hard to resolve. They'll have lots of fears. They have lots of like little weird feeds. Sometimes they'll get tagged, oh, that person's a hypochondriac, and it's not that, it's just the water is blocked, or frozen, or disturbed, right, in chaos. So, and those are, I find these correspondences really dead on, really true. That if these are all showing up, we definitely have to look at water. Okay, blocked wood. They'll have Diaphragmatic tension, kind of what that means is like they hold their breath because they're working so hard, they're not even thinking about it, and they won't take a deep breath. But also sometimes like their digestion gets really blocked right here in the middle jiao, and they just feel stuffed in that middle area, right? They'll bloat after meals. They'll complain, it doesn't matter what I eat. Like I changed my whole diet and I bloat. That's blocked wood. One-sided migraines or headaches, the left side of the body is gallbladder and the right side is the liver ish, so they'll have them and they can be quite intense. They'll be frustrated and have a temper. And they might have one of those, and it's not like they have a temper all the time. It might be like fine, 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 a little brusque, a little terse, and all of a sudden, ba-boom, right? Or they might be like ba-boom, 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 little tiny outbursts. So it could look anyway like that. There has to be this underlying frustration that is like constantly their like thing, right? And they're resentful. There's like this thing going on, like they can't let it go. Right? It's like, that person, blah, 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 5 years ago, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, did you ever hear of forgiveness? It's like, wow, okay, ouch, you're hurting, man, and it really hurts them to hold on to that stuff. But if that's there with all these other things, especially digestion stuff, and the bloating, right? And the headaches, right? Like I met this guy. It's not just guy. I mean, women can be blocked wood too, right? But I met this guy, and he just like had a migraine every day of his life. Talk about blocked wood, right? Yeah, pretty intense. Okay, blocked fire, overheated chest and head, like heat all the way up here all the time, right? Sometimes just like red nose and a capillaries broken in the nose, right? Palpitations, tightness in the chest. Manic moods mean like one day really like happy and fun loving and fine, and the next day like, whoa, like, oh gosh, like really flat affect, kind of like whatever, kind of like that, and then the next day after that, like really bouncing off the walls, right? And they'll have insomnia where they might go to sleep, they might have a hard time going to sleep, but they wake up and then they go back to sleep and then they wake up like that. Blocked earth, digestive disturbances always, the burping, gas, bloating, and so then you think to yourself, well, but the blocked wood had bloating. That's right, but all the rest of the other story has to kind of work with that too, right? With earth, when we have blocked earth, you have these bizarre appetite things that you don't see with the wood. Okay, so when you have a blocked wood, they don't have the crazy appetite things. They kind of eat really they're regular, they eat and they don't have any attachment or weirdness with food. Blocked earth, they have all kinds of eating disorders, whatever it is, whether it's anorexia, whether it's bulimia, whether they're using laxatives. They're just so uncomfortable in this part of their world, of their life. So that's very much blocked earth. They worry a lot. They have obsessive thinking, right? And they get really bad brain fog, right? I think like really forgetful. Yeah, and that can be, people can like tag them flighty, or like, kind of like, wow, they're just like, whatever, they can't pay attention, or, something like that. And then blocked metal is, you'll have like this very tight chest, right? Can't bring in breath. Can't take a deep breath at all. The bowel will be completely irritable, right? Constipation or diarrhea or both, or really, really, really bad diarrhea, or even worse, blood in the stool, runny stool, never can form a BM, or the other way around, sitting on the toilet, hemorrhoids from pushing, that kind of thing. So blocked metal, all of that stuff with the big bowel. And asthma can show up. And that inability to make connections, it's kind of like, you stay over there, I'm going to stay here, just like can't bring it together. And then that flat affect, right? And real grief, like crying, but alone usually, usually crying alone. And they have a tendency towards depression. Okay, so So that, and those are general, there's more, but you know, that just gets the thing going here. Okay. What I want to do next is I just kind of want to do this little exercise. So, okay. So you see somebody come in, and they're like, you know, we say that, you know, they have a really good constitutional type, right? And, you know, someone comes in, they're really strong, they're really stable, they have, you know, they have beautiful complexion, and they have bright eyes, and they have really good endurance, and they have normal bowel, and they have really good urinary habits, and they're adaptable to environmental changes. So if you have someone come in and they're like really strong like this, now you have to start to look for things like the sound of their voice and the color, right, of their pallor. And you have to ask them about, you know, their appetite. You have to ask them about, you know, their skin. And so, so taking in this information like this, you know, you could have someone that comes in and they don't have like big complaints, but still thinking about them in the 5-element aspect of, well, if they're really, really tall and have a really, really thin face, and they have a dry voice, and their skin is kind of white, right? Or they have this white color around their face, and they seem pretty much healthy, but they have a little bit of constipation, and they've been constipated since birth, and they really love to study, and they seem a little bit aloof. What kind of constitutional type would that be? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Sheila,
We're looking at metal, metal,
oh, very
metal,
good.
metal, metal.
Excellent. Look, you guys are already experts. You don't even need me. Okay, so here's a type that's like G deficient. They have something wrong with them, and they come in, all right, and they have colds and flu. They have a cold. They have a really bad cold, but you're thinking to yourself, I don't know, I'm not really sure, and I'm backing up here. So they have a lot of flesh, right? And you look at them and you think to yourself, man, they kind of have like this yellow, kind of yellow, sallow skin color, right? And I'm not really sure if it's because of their cold or if it's really their color, but it's there, and you write it down. And but they have a lot of flesh, like they go to reach up, they go to reach up and scratch their head, and the skin under their arm flap is a little wabbly, it's wagging a little bit, okay? And you know, when they're telling their story, they're kind of, you know, their voices, you know, they're not very well, so they're like, you know, little scratchy voice, and they're kind of coughing, but they kind of still have this sweet sing-songy kind of quality to them. And you ask them, you know, they're a little tired, they're feeling really tired, and they feel like they're coming down with a cold, and you know, you ask them and you say, well, do you feel like you have chills, or a fever? And they say, well, I can't really tell you that, but I can tell you this, that that my legs and arms feel really heavy, right? And I feel like I'm like damp everywhere. Like I must be sweating, but it doesn't feel like sweat. It just feels like I'm damp. I'm damp under my arms, I'm damp in between my legs, and whatnot. And you know, and you say to them, you know, well, how's your appetite? And they say to you, oh my God, I can never shut my app. I know I'm not feeling well, and I still am eating. It's stupid. I like eat all the time. What kind of constitutional type would that be?
All right, while folks are typing in their answers, earlier Howard asked, what would be the difference between flesh and skin? And I answered, skin is usually, you know, pretty much what you have on the surface, and flesh can sometimes include the musculature. But would you add anything to that?
It was perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
So answers coming in. We've got earth, earth, earth. One for water. Earth,
Earth,
earth, earth, earth. Wood,
mostly earth.
earth, earth, earth.
Good job. Good job. Okay. Okay. The person comes in. They have a hoodie on. They have they have these boots on, right? These like UGG boots on, you know, and they have these thick socks on, and they're like, wow, you keep your well, you keep your clinic a little on the cool side. This actually happened to me. You keep your clinic a little on the cool side. And you know, they're sitting there and their lips are pretty thin and they're small, they're petite and they're small and they're kind of hunched up like this and they're just looking at you really intently and they're not very reactionary. You have to really get them, you have to ask a lot of questions to find out what's going on. Their lips are a little on the blue side, right? And you know, they're saying that, you know, I'm really uncomfortable in windy environments. I've been getting like, you know, bouts of diarrhea, and I think I'm really like, think I'm really not feeling well. And but my hands and feet have always been cold, like always been cold. And then you ask them, you say, you know, how are you you know, how are you doing at work and, you know, how are you doing in your life? You know, are you feeling like you can, you know, that you're able to manifest? Are you feeling like, you know, you've been able to like, you know, get up and do you have any get up and go? And they say, no, you know, quite frankly, I just haven't had the will to do much. So what kind of constitutional type is that?
We're seeing water, 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 water.
So great. That's perfect. That's so perfect. Okay. All right. So someone comes into you and they say, you know, my hands and feet have been on fire. Okay. Um, and they're so bad at it's so bad at night. I'm sticking my feet out of the covers, right? And you look at them and they're thin, but they have muscles, right? And you and they're like, I just can't stand the summer. I'm you know, I have problems with insomnia. I can't sleep. I got so much on my mind and I have so much to do, right? And but they seem like aggravated and frustrated and impatient with you. They're like, you know, can you hurry this up? You're taking so long. You ask me all these questions. Why are you bothering me? You know, I'm like, I just want you to give me a formula and get out of here, right? I've got so much to do. And you ask them, you know, do you feel frustrated in your life, right? And they have a very square jaw, right? Um, and they have a really good muscle formation. And you ask them, do you work out? And they're like, I don't need to work out. I'm just like this, right? Um, what kind of constitutional type do you think that is?
Let's see, answers are coming in. We're seeing wood. We've got one for fire. Wood, 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 fire, fire, wood, wood, fire, fire, wood.
I threw you off a little bit with the hot hands and feet there, right? That's yin deficient wood. And you'll learn about yin deficient, but that's it. Like go back to the constitutional type, right? You know, good muscles, really frustrated, want to do a million things, have lots to do, really impatient, like I'm out of here, right? I got to get going. I got things to do. I know I'm not feeling well, but just give me a formula. I got to go, right? That's the wood, right?
We
Excellent.
touched on this just a little bit on Monday with Leslie and TCM Fundamentals, going through 8 principles and yin yang, which one is in excess, which one is in deficiency. And we just barely made mention of false heat.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know the slides are a little bit like to throw you off a little bit because that's what happens. People come in and they have a condition, but under the condition, right, is the constitutional type, and you want to know if that constitutional type is out of balance or in balance, or but you want to know what it is, right? You want to know like, what is this, a wood type coming in? You know, is this a water type coming in? Is this the, and again, you know, we're everything. We're all of those things. But you kind of need to, you have to have a stepping off place. You have to be able to sort of say, you know, am I looking at an earth type? Am I looking at a water type? They could have all kinds of issues going on, right? But you know, we also want to make sure that we write down when we're doing our intake and we figure out the pattern, what's the constitutional type too. So the issue here, of course, this is a damp heat slide, but let's do the constitutional type. Of course, I know I did this to be a little tricky on purpose, because that's how it is in real life. People come in and you kind of have to wade through it all to figure it all out. So this person comes in and they have a lot of pimples, like really bad acne, right? And they have incredible fatigue, right? And and oh, by the way, we might do a couple of elements. We might do a couple of the same elements. So, okay. So they have a lot of acne on their face, and they have a kind of a raspy voice, and they're thin. You know, they're really thin, and they're in because they're like really upset about their skin, right? They're like, can you just help me with this skin condition that I have? And you find out later, right, that that they've had breathing problems their whole life, right? And that they have really horrible issues sleeping. Like they don't sleep at all. They think they sleep 1 or 2 hours at night, right? So what constitutional type is this?
We're seeing metal, water, metal, metal, wood constitution with blocked metal, 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 metal.
It's a metal type, but good. I like the wood constitution with a blocked metal. Very good. That's sophisticated. Very good. Okay, we have someone come in and they're a delight. They come in, they're having problems. You know, they're older, they're aging, and they're kind of having a little bit of issues with concentration, but they're absolute delight. They're cracking jokes. They're an absolute cut up. You don't want them to leave. And they're just hilarious, right? And you think the party arrived, but you notice, it's summertime and they have a skirt on, and you notice that they have, some issues with their vascular, their legs and the vessels in their legs. They have, broken capillaries and some vascular issues. And they've been also talking a little bit about, that their heart hurts a little bit, that they feel like they've been having this like weird chest pain, and they kind of been like, I don't want to see the doctor, but I just have this weird chest pain, and but they're also saying, well, sometimes I have bruises, but the biggest issue I have really, is I have insomnia, and I go to sleep fine, but I wake up, and I wake up a lot, and my mind is going and my heart is going. I feel palpitations a little bit, and I can't really put my finger on it. And they're telling jokes the whole time. What constitutional type is that?
We are seeing fire, 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 fire type with blocked water. Fire, 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 fire.
Good, great, good job. Okay. All right, so in a constitutional analysis, I'm just going to put this all together for you because we're coming in for a landing here, and I want to have some time for questions and just sort of putting it all together. So all of this, like so I don't write this. Let me back up here for a second. In my intake, I don't have little spots for this. I write this down in the margin of my intake, and it's just there. It's like, I think to myself, they're talking away, and I look, there was a little yellow here or a little green, right? or they look really white, and I'll put the color. And then I'm listening to their voice and I'm writing, and I write somewhere in the margin, the sound of their voice is raspy, the sound of their voice is singing, the sound of their voice, is moaning, like they sound like they're moaning all the time, or the sound of their voice, right? And then I'll think about, when they get on the table and I'm doing abdominal palpation, which you'll learn, to test how the organs are and see how the organs are. I'll actually smell them. So that ought to tell you, I have the nose of a bloodhound, right? I can smell somebody's head and go earth. I can smell somebody, right? So there's a smell, like, and I'll write down that smell. I'll say, they smell rotten, or they smell like ripe fruit, or they smell like water that's been sitting, like a cesspool, like, and that happens. Like I'll say, and it'll just come to me. I'll say they smell like a cesspool, or they smell burnt. That's definitely a smell. Like you'll smell them and you go, wow, they smell like burnt or something. Something like burnt toast or burnt marshmallows, or smell like burnt marshmallows. I actually have that in my notes somewhere, right? And the emotions look kind of easy because all of you probably get it. There's fear, there's frustration, there's anger, there's impatience, so you can write down that emotion. And then, whether they're hot, cold, moist, right? If they are shiny and they seem like they're very moist, or dry, so you can write down the climate. And then you want to, while you're doing that, you're just taking that down and you're writing that down, right? You want to think about those imbalances, right? That you want to think about the Sheng cycle and the Ko cycle that we just went over. So you give the dominant element, right? And then you say, what are those imbalances that I'm seeing? Just like you just did. Some of you just did it automatically, which is beautiful. And you'll work into this. And then you want to make sure that even if you move forward into, a Zong Fu pattern diagnosis and then an assessment, don't forget the constitutional piece, because this part can be really groundbreaking. It can really move your case. Or if you do the Zong Fu and you get the pattern and you start working and you're not getting the movement that you want, back up to your notes on 5 elements to get the clinical outcomes that you want. Because I have found, like, even in my own practice, that sometimes it's not the physical, it's the spiritual and the psychological. It's not always like that's the linchpin, but sometimes it is. And when I go there and when I'm willing to go through 5 elements, it's like literally a magical experience. So this is what I do. I do it. You can have an intake that has this somewhere for your own use, right? Because these are your impressions. This is how you're experiencing that person. But definitely do it as an exercise because it really gets you there. So this is one last thought. So, I've been in clinical practice for 31 years in various permutations, right? In various stages of growth as a practitioner. And of course, TCM and homeopathy have been kind of the later stages of those permutations. But I found something really, really true is that when people come to you because they're not well and they're looking for an assistant in that journey to wellness, right? They have to go through chaos, right? So wherever they are, they're stuck there, right? They're just stuck. They're like, I'm not well, and I don't know how to get better. Like my bodies can't figure out how to get better. My mind can't figure out how to get better. My spirit can't figure out how to get better. It's lost, and I'm stuck, right? So in order to go from this static place of where they are to wellness, they have to go through chaos, right? So chaos, transformation at the turning point, right? So just remember, like, as foundational students, you're going to use these tools and people are going to change, right? And when they first change, they might not feel comfortable in that change. Just remember, you're okay. That's the point of this, right? the clouds gather, right, to send forth thunder and rain, right, and lightning, right? And in that chaos, right, at the beginning of your journey with your patient, right, you're going to get to order. That implicitly going from the chaos, you will get to that ordered state of wellness and well-being. Just hang in there, right? And in order to find that place in the infinity of the being, the Tao, the beginning point of the oneness, right? We have to be able to separate, go through the chaos, and then unite. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. That's it. It's not that too hard. These are the books that I read on 5 elements. Have fun. Thank you all so much. I know you have questions, and I'm here to do my best with it. And we have so many, we have experts on, but I mean, I'm not an expert, but we have other people on to answer questions too. So go ahead.
I'm going to start with a comment from Fatima. So true. I work mostly with women, and when we are balancing hormones, it gets worse before it gets better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't be afraid of it. Just hang in there. You're okay. You know, reach out to your herbal brothers and sisters. Like I can't ever leave East West because this is my clan. These are my peeps. You know, it's like I need I need them all because I get lost. You know, still after all these years, I get lost. I'm like, I can't see this. I'm not seeing this. What did I forget? Man, what about 5 elements? What about this? What about that?
Yep, I second you on that one. Yeah.
That's awesome, Sheila. Yeah.
All right, we are at 12:28. We've got a couple more minutes. Nancy, a few people asked along the way if you would be so generous as to share the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, the school has it,
Okay.
and we can make it available to you. Absolutely. I'm very happy to do that. Sure.
All right, so so everyone listening, note that that will most likely come as an email from Jill. And Jill did ask this morning to remind everybody to be sure to check your spam folders as she is sending out a lot of information. Comments coming in. Loved this presentation. Thank you. Nancy, you took a lot of effort to prepare those wonderful slides. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did a beautiful job. It was poetry. Heart.
Oh,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yes, exactly. This was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Super informative.
Great.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So all of you foundation students, keep going. Keep going, please. We're here for you. Sheila's here, Pam, Susan, of course, Leslie and Michael, of course, the founders of all of this incredible magic. Please keep going because it gets just rich and juicy and overwhelming.
Yeah.
and
a few more comments and questions. Yeah. Nancy, your passion is inspiring.
Oh,
and I wanted to know if you do consultations, Nancy.
I do.
Yeah, I loved being treated to thinking in a new way about the 5 elements and enlightening. Thank you both. Oh, thanks. So Nancy, if someone is interested in following up with you for a consultation, or if someone wants to be able to refer someone to you, what's the best way to proceed?
Oh, sure. Let me just write this in here. If you want to contact me, let me do. I was just going to do this little, write it in here. Yeah, sure. This is easy. Just nancy.angelini@gmail.com. Send me an email, or you can go to my website, which is www. Wait a second, that wasn't what I wanted to do. angelhealinggroup.com, and just say you're a student. Yep. Yeah, that's the best way, is just to email me and say you're a foundational student, and I'd be happy to see you. I've a packed schedule, but I will, and I do have student fees for students. And it's fun. You know, and usually when I'm working with a student, I kind of like talk out loud so that they're learning as well as getting some healing. And thank you all. I just have to tell you that it is my joy, and I feel privileged to be on the faculty of this illustrious herbal school. And my herbal mama and papa, Michael and Leslie, are very near and dear to me. And I'm tearing up. And
Oh,
this is my last class to teach in this group. You know, you usually have much more in-person connection with people, so I'm kind of missing that a little bit. But I will tell you that I hope I see all of you. I hope I see you next year as an intermediate, and then the year after that as an advanced student. And if there's anything I can do to be supportive of your journey in this school, I'm happy to do what I can do. So thank you very much. Thank you. Have a
all
great
right.
day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good lunch break today. And I'm just going to give you that physical reminder again. Do some deep breaths, do some long distance gazing to compensate for the screen gazing. All right, take good care. And I think we're done. I'm going to hit the pause button.
Hi.